Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back. George Morgan here at your service. It's PSGL, it's Wednesday night, it's Spain tonight as well. Lots on the table, lots of battling. The title contest is still alive and kicking. And Jack, it's only taken us 10 rounds. We're on the 11th. It's all to play for.
Boromand goes on the inside and takes the lead on the final lap of the race. Now it's side by side between Boromand and Bonnar, but Boromand's got the inside.
Star here in this phenomenal race. Cameron Dowd looking to take P2 in his very first PSGL F1 PC race. Incredible to say the least. You see there, Putin to lead. 1.5 seconds. DRS is the name. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to PSGL, brought to you by the good people at GT Omega and Sim Racing Centre. Now, number 5 is certainly the poignant number this time around as we go racing for only the 5th time here at Brazil. Jarno Opmeer chasing a 5th PSGL PC title, and yet he has never won here. We are heading to Interlagos for this certainly stellar round with only 5 rounds to go. Again, it's that number 5 again. It is going to be a sensational ride. I'm looking forward to it. My name being George Morgan. Joining me in the commentary box, the one, the only, Dan Field. Dan, we're all set for another night of racing, and I can't wait. The title fight on the line. Jarno Opmeer in the form of his life. The question is, can anyone stop him?
It's looking very unlikely at the minute, George. I mean, Jarno Opmeer, as of last week as well, in that brilliant Mexican Grand Prix, looked unstoppable. And maybe with all the 5s going around tonight at Brazil, George, it can be a 5-star race on our hands. It is really a fun circuit to come here and watch and commentate over. So I'm really looking forward to it today.
It's going to be sensational, folks. We're going to take you first through some key notes to go through, because obviously we've got to, first of all, take you through the driver lineup. We've got a stellar lineup here tonight. Sauber, they're welcoming back again, as always, Thomas Ronhart and Brendan Lee. Yoni Tormala and Shanaka Clay, who has been certainly turning up trees a little bit here. Shanaka Clay, his form has taken a distinct upwards turn, obviously chasing yet another seat in Formula 1 after his Williams departure. He is back in for AlphaTauri. Luke Smith and Ruben Pedreño at Alpine. We've got Fabrizio Donoso and Simon Weigang at Aston Martin. Nicholas Long and Barry Boromand announcing their arrival back at Ferrari once again, with the final rounds confirmed here at PSGL. Alfie Butcher and Ben Charbot-Cogny back at Haas, with McLaren fielding Otis Lawrence and the returning Danny Berejne. Jarno Opmeer and Jake Benham at Mercedes, with Frederick Rasmussen and Josh Edo at Red Bull. Alvaro Carreton and Ishmael Fassi line up for Williams as well, in what can only be described as one of the strongest grids we have seen all season long. Now, that's not all we've got to look at. We can confirm the final rounds of the PSGL PCF1 title will take us to Brazil on February the 21st, which is where we are this evening. Austria up next for round 9 on February the 28th, and then Belgium for round 10 on March 6th. And then we're going stateside for 2 of the final rounds. March 13th, it's Texas, and then where else? Las Vegas, where the dice will be rolled. We could yet decide the crown in that final round on March 20th, but nevertheless, still all to play for. Dan, a mouth-watering grid and a mouth-watering calendar to boot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to some of those last few rounds on the calendar. Las Vegas, one of my least favourite to drive, George, but absolutely incredible to commentate over. Makes for some of the best races in league racing. And with Austria, Belgium, Texas, and of course tonight's Brazil, we are in for some fantastic last few rounds. And with this grid here tonight, George, I don't know what else to say. It's star-studded all around. Everywhere you look, everywhere you turn, there's a big name. And I could see any one of these guys coming out with a strong result today.
Yeah, I agree. I firmly agree. And I think if you look at the trends, we haven't had any driver that has come back and won the race twice. We've only had drivers win it once. In season 27, Alvaro Carreton won it all the way back in our opening season of PCF1 action. Season 30, we didn't have one in season 29. Danny Berejne, who is returning here tonight, was a winner back in season 30. And then obviously no race again in the season 31, which we should have had the grand finale at Brazil. Thomas Ronhart won it in season 32 and 33. Barry Boromand, the most recent winner of the race back in season 34, in which he would go on to certainly take the title the season prior against Thomas Ronhart, which was decided in the stewards room. Obviously, season 34, it went by the way of Jarno Opmeer. But nevertheless, Jarno yet to win at this track, and he's coming off the back of a bit of a streak here. 3 times a race winner this season, Danfield.
Yeah, Jarno Opmeer has been undeniable throughout this season, and last time out in Mexico was truly special. Looks special. It looked really, really difficult.
It was special, very special. That's for sure.
Special, George. But it was a very special win for him. It looked like the race was over for him. Of course, we had 2 Mexican Grand Prix of sorts with all of the issues going on with the Steam servers, and then Jarno Opmeer, of course, having to pit behind Jake Benham. It looked over for him, but what a drive for the Flying Dutchman to take his 3rd win of the season. And is he going to continue along the trend here tonight in Brazil and take his first victory around this circuit? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, let me just say, Interlagos has provided many a great moment in the history of PSGL. We've seen wheel-to-wheel action. We hark back to the times where Jarno Opmeer and Barry Burman have come together. Of course, we've seen that consistently in league racing for years now, going all the way back to 2018 in my recent memory. And of course, that was prior to Jarno even getting a seat in F1 Esports, which is absolutely unbelievable to fathom. But nonetheless, he is here. And we have got a phenomenal grid. I mean, just take a look at it. We've got Shanaka Clay out on track as well, who has been in great form in recent weeks. Obviously, folks, let us know who you're backing in qualifying. Obviously, we've got to give a great shout-out as well. Big shout-out to GT Omega, our sponsors, as well as Sim Racing Centre as well. A huge backer for the PSGL Premier Sim Gaming Leagues. Obviously a great supporter of this series as well, and it's great to have them here along with us once again. Shanaka Clay heading through the hairpin, of course, here at Interlagos. 2.7 miles of pure racing here, Dan. Technical, undulating. You've got all kinds of avenues to take, plenty of overtaking opportunities. It is a roller coaster track.
It is absolutely beautiful. It's such an iconic circuit on the Formula One calendar. Seen so many races, both in real life and here in PSGL, that are so memorable. Of course, the very first title finale, George, being held at this circuit where Jarno Opmeer took his 2nd ever PSGL title, his first on the PC, first of many. And so I think Brazil holds a special place in all of the drivers' hearts and all of the viewers watching at home, as qualifying is well and truly underway. Shanaka Clay getting his lap up and running, and he's flying his way through underneath the GT Omega banner, George. Absolutely beautiful work from Byron and Josh, I believe it is. It's just fantastic stuff.
Yeah, fabulous to see, and it's also fabulous to see Shanaka Clay out on track, the very first man to unleash a flying lap here in Q1. 14 minutes to take us through right to the very end. It's just important to note as well, Ferrari deciding not to really go full send here in qualifying. They're opting to start from the back, so obviously greater things afoot for Ferrari. I know obviously many drivers with different priorities through the course of the championship and the campaign, with F1 Esports still very much in discussion. Obviously, many of the drivers looking to try and marshal their chances in winning the F1 Esports title. Some citing PSGL as a priority as well, but Shanaka Clay now going to the top with a 107.413. Certainly not the fastest on track, though, because we have got Otis Lawrence, who has just come across the line. He went purple in the first 2 sectors, stole them from Shanaka Clay, but many other cars still yet to head out. Still early doors, Q1 though underway. Otis Lawrence setting the initial benchmark, 19 thousandths faster than Shanaka Clay in 2nd place.
Yeah, Otis Lawrence coming onto Twitter earlier today, or X, I guess, as it is known as, saying that he's going to be out of Q1 this evening. But George, he is actually the best qualifier that we have on the grid at the minute. He's got the highest average position of about 4.3. So it seems very unlikely that the young McLaren Shadow driver is going to be eliminated at this point. And as more and more laps begin to clock in, it's looking good for Otis Lawrence in that McLaren. Yeah,
looking very good right now. The 2 Aston Martins, 3rd and 4th. Simon Weigang, Fabrizio Donoso. Of course, this young man, Otis Lawrence, very much a favourite for an F1 Esports seat in the future. McLaren Shadow hold him in very high esteem. He is part of it. And we do have other drivers making their way out on outlaps at this stage as well. Just keeping my beady eyes on the sister McLaren belonging to Danny Berejnay. Now, important to note, he had a little bit of a breakdown field and has now marked his return, but someone who is so successful and is a race winner this season.
Yeah, Danny Berejnay has had an absolutely fantastic season for the races that he actually started, and he's still in a pretty decent position when it comes to the championship hunt. So maybe this could be a late resurgence in his title hopes, but I'm just hoping for a good race for Danny Berejnay, of course, leaving in very dramatic circumstances last time he was here in Canada. It's good that he's taken a break, and I'm very happy to see that the Hungarian driver, one of the esports greats, I would say, is back on the grid this evening.
Yeah, very much the current great as well. Of course, his recent form has been stellar, as you alluded to. Race winner, has taken many podiums to boot, and the rapidly fast Hungarian has been on the grid for what seems like a lifetime, and has cemented his legacy in league racing, years gone by, and now very much in the now has been a peripheral figure, returning to Mercedes, his old stomping ground where he was alongside Brendan Lee, the time when Brendan Lee would win his title as Luke Smith goes fastest straight away out of the blocks, managing to go purple in that middle sector and steal the time away from Otis Lawrence. Now, it's important to note that the track will get better and better, more and more optimal as time goes on, so no doubt some of the drivers may find a little bit extra time. As now we see Danny Berejnay heading up towards the line now. Where can he muster? You'll go 6th fastest in behind the Aston Martins. More cars coming across as well, including Ruben Pedreño, who returns for Alpine once again, part of the Race Clutch family. And of Alpine, he now goes 6th fastest ahead of Danny Berejnay too. Brendan Lee also out on track, another former champion. We alluded to him as well being teammates with Danny Berejnay. He too, at this stage, I think off the back of the changing in traction on the game as well, favours a lot of the older drivers, such as Danny Berejnay and Brendan Lee here at this stage, Dan. Brendan Lee not out of it in terms of pace or certainly where it comes to his competitive levels.
Oh, absolutely not. Brendan Lee, I think, is often overlooked in these modern times. Of course, it's been a while since his early championships in 2017, 2018, but he hasn't lost a step, in my opinion, and he's doing really well on this F1 23 game. Now a part of the Sauber organization. They have a beautiful lineup of Brendan Lee and Thomas Ronhaar, and I really think the pair of them could do great things once esports hopefully starts up very soon, as Brendan Lee now is about to cross the line. The two Saubers in tandem. Brendan only P8 for the time being. What about Thomas Ronhaar as he approaches the line, the quickest of them all by 300ths of a second? Thomas Ronhaar here to play.
Yeah, certainly is. Joni Tormela as well, one of the OGs of the F1 esports world as well. Started very much like Brendan Lee from the very beginning. Of course, we all know his story. Has been part of the Red Bull family now for such a long time. Incidentally enough, now we allude to this young man, now going from the experienced members of the grid to the newbies, Ismail Fassi, who we were very much talking about him as the artist, should we say, Danfield, especially after what he managed to pull off back at Saudi Arabia, and seems to love pulling off the old switchback overtakes. He has gone purple in the first sector, so has gone faster than Thomas Ronhaar in the initial sector, and personal best as you'd expect, obviously, given it's his first run in Sector 2 at 33.8 after pulling off a 16.723. This definitely looks like it's going to be very competitive here for young Ismail Fassi. Has he found something special in the final sector? He certainly has. Goes fastest, a 1:07.247. Not a bad time to get himself out of the blocks. But he has just gone purple in Sector 3, and he's been impressive right through the course of this season, and Williams hold him in such high esteem.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, not starting the first two races. He's yet to finish outside the top 6, and that was in his first race at Britain. So, George, in the span of just 4 races, he's finished in the top 5 every single one of those starts, and of course has taken 2 podiums to his name, one of those being in Saudi Arabia, where he was pulling off some masterclass overtakes, and he was doing that as well in Mexico. It wasn't to such a high degree, but it's still a very impressive season being had by the young Spaniard. He worked really well with Alvaro Caraton. I think there's a little bit of mentorship maybe going on between the two fellow countrymen, and it is working for the pair of them. Both of them are doing very, very well. Alvaro Caraton, George, consistently in the points-paying positions. Ismail Fassi challenging for podiums. Seems like a win-win situation.
Yeah, it does. And let me just say, Caraton, don't forget, the OG winner of Brazil in PCF1, took the very first Brazil victory back in season 27. Jake Benham going 6th fastest, just ahead of teammate Jana Watmere. The two of them who certainly share a dynamic relationship, have worked together now for quite a long time. Of course, Jake Benham very much a reserve driver last season, given the fact that they kind of opted for for, I suppose, experience last season in their campaign of F1 Esports, but Jake Benham afforded the opportunity to teammate up with Jarno through the course of league racing last season. Very much like Wilson Hughes was adopted for. Obviously, Wilson Hughes did not make one single appearance in F1 Esports last season, is not making an appearance here in PSGL either in PCF1 at this stage. Obviously, he's made a few sporadic ones, but it'd be great to see him back full time. I know that Connor has been pushing for it quite a lot, but nevertheless, Wilson defiant in this case. But nonetheless, obviously looking ahead, Mercedes with a very good lineup that has proven successful. Simon Weigang now going 7th fastest. Thomas Ronha retiring from the session. He knows that he's safe. But looking at the bottom, Caraton, former race winner, yet to marshal a time on the board and looking to try and put one through. Obviously, we're not going to be seeing times from the Ferrari pairing. So there's 3 places essentially for elimination coming through to the end of the session with threats of rain. Dan, I know a few of the people in the live chat are talking about it. We will not see it in this session of qualifying. I think it's more likely in Q2.
Yeah, and that's why we're actually seeing all of these soft laps come out very early. I picked up on it at one point. I was like, wait a minute, why are there no intermediate runs like they normally do? And then it clicked in my brain. There is going to be rain at some point, so they need those intermediate tyres, as Luke Smith has just come across the line to marshal in a 107.27. What a nice enough time from the Alpine to get himself into second position. Alvaro Caraton, meanwhile, George, heading now through the final few corners. I think with both Ferraris out of this session, it's going to take off some of the pressure on the shoulders of these drivers. Alvaro still a very nice time into the 107.4s to get himself up into P6 as Shanaka puts himself into P3. It's like a good few times now coming in, but with Nicholas Longe and Barry Burman being out of this session, George, I think some guys are going to relax a little bit more than they normally would.
Well, they won't be relaxing too much, and I tell you one man who won't be relaxed at all is Alfie Butcher. This is his flying lap, and it's a very important one. He needs to lift himself off the bottom, but if there's one man who does qualify well, it's the current Challengers champion in F1 Esports. Off the back of his success in F1 Esports Challengers, he got himself a seat at the Haas F1 Esports team, and now making his way up the hill through Jun Chao, and now making his way past the Archie Bancadas out of turn 15. He's going to look to light up the timing screens with 4 minutes and 30 still to go. A big time here to be placed here by Alfie Butcher. Will he bring the carving knife down upon the timing screen? He will go 3rd fastest, a 107.290, and surely that's going to be safe downfield.
Oh yeah, very nice time from Alfie Butcher there, having also a very great season as well. Ishmael Fassi and Alfie Butcher, you've got to watch out for them, and Otis Lawrence as well. The 3 young bucks of the esports grid are having an absolutely stellar time in the PSGL series, and I gotta say, George, it means that F1 Esports, the future, is in very safe hands of Ishmael and Alfie and Luke, actually lining up 1, 2, and 3 at the minute. Otis Lawrence lagging behind ever so slightly, but it seems like today the young guys are ruling the roost.
Yeah, they certainly are. Personal improvements as well from Brendan Lee as we're now watching him cross the line. Yoni Tormola invalidated his previous lap now as Lee comes up towards the line. 2-time F1 Esports champion, 11th fastest. A shade of an improvement. Could yet keep him safe through the rest of this session, though there are plenty of drivers queued up. Here is Vassi now goes to the top with a 107.231. Freddie Rasmussen not far off elimination, needs a big time to secure safety. The Great Dane, who has been runner-up in F1 Esports now on several occasions, 7th fastest. I'll surely put him in a good place as they come towards the very end of this last gasping qualifying. Still plenty more times to be ushered in. Jarno Opmeer also out on track. We haven't seen much of him so far this session, but he's right on the bubble of elimination here and needs to find something special. A 16.7 in Sector 2 is certainly in the right ballpark. 33.8 in Sector 2 isn't bad either. So finding a little more here is the Flying Dutchman now as he heads up towards the line. Surely enough to break into the top 10, you'd expect. Can he find it? Yes, he will. 3rd fastest for Jarno Opmeer. And right on the cusp of breaking into Luke Smith's time as well. Only mere thousandths away. In fact, if you want to know the numbers, 53 thousandths from the top. Everyone in the top 5 within 82 thousandths of a second. That is so close.
Yeah, and of course that normally is quite common around a circuit like Brazil, given how short it is. We have a few more runners on laps at the minute, George. One of those being Danny Berejne in the drop zone at the minute. He needs a good time to get himself out of this Q1 session. Here comes the Hungarian up towards the line. It's only P12. Maybe is the rust beginning to show after his short break? He might need to ease back in to PSGL here this evening. P12, it is enough to be safe at the minute, but when you're given the degree of talent that is sat behind him as Josh Adowu puts himself into P11, given the degree of talent behind Danny Berejne, I would not say that that P13 is safe at all.
No, I wouldn't say so either. Jake Benham now coming up towards the line, looking to break out of P14. Could yet do so. Yes, he does.
Oh.
Second fastest for the All-Star Jake Benham, winner back at Silverstone earlier this season, and is now back into the top 2. That is an absolutely stellar time from the All-Star, and no doubt confirmed safety. So that's both Mercedes in the top 4. A fantastic session for them. A very important clutch lap, an integral clutch lap. Misfortune, though, for one Joni Tormala, who has struggled throughout the session. 1 minute and 16 to go, and he's in the relegation zone, or in the elimination zone, in P18 here at this stage. And it looks like he's coming into the pits. Joni Tormala's day is done.
Oh, that's a disappointing end.
And the rain's out.
Joni Tormala. Rain's here. Wow. And Brendan Lee in the pit lane at the minute, George. I don't think it would make any difference if he was able to get out on circuit with the rain now falling on the circuit. Bad timing for Simon Weigang there, and it's going to be a crushing elimination. Missing out on Q2 by just 0.003 of a second off the back of Ruben Pedreño. Maybe there's some miracle lap in here from him. Never mind. Disappointing end to Simon Weigang. Finally finding a league that he can join, but he is unfortunately having a tough time on his return to PSGL.
Yeah, very unlucky, it has to be said, because according to our telemetry screen, we are not due to receive rain until around 6 minutes' time. So obviously the weather we work off in league racing, generally approximate. It does obviously come up with its few surprises, its few jack-in-the-box moments, and the drivers have to think fast on their feet as well to make big decisions with the tyres. And obviously Simon getting caught out in that instance, and unfortunately it means that he is eliminated from Q1 essentially, but relief for Ruben Pedreño. Despite only the 3 thousandths that separates he and Simon Weigang, it's enough for him to retain safety. But some real success stories as well in amongst this grid, including this young man, Jake Benham, who has managed to unlock the pace and move into P2. But it's Ismail Fassi who goes fastest, a stellar time of 107.231. Benham in second, Luke Smith in third for Alpine, with Jarno Opmeer in fourth place, Alfie Butcher fifth, Shanaka Clay sixth, Thomas Ronhaar in seventh, Otis Lawrence in eighth, Freddie Rasmussen ninth, with Fabrizio Donoso, a much improved performance in P10, Ben Jabo Conye 11th, Josh Ido in 12th, Alvaro Caraton in 13th, Danny Berejne 14th, Ruben Pedreño in 15th, and we lose Simon Weigang, Brendan Lee, big shock there, Joni Tormala, Nicholas Longay and Barry Burraman. So there we are, some shocks as well, Dan Field. Probably didn't expect Brendan Lee to be out so soon.
Well, Brendan Lee's had a really tough time of qualifying in recent weeks. It's not been easy for the two-time esports champion, and so he's going to have to make it up once again in the race here this evening. There's plenty of time so far this season, George, that Brendan has been eliminated in Q1, and Brazil, unfortunately, is no exemption to that. His teammate, though, Thomas Ronhaar, into the next session, and so we'll see what the Sauber cars can do as we transition over to the game scene. I can just see it's come up on my other screen here, George, clattering it down with the rain.
Pouring with rain right now. And a few of you have asked as well, a few questions. Where has the waistcoat gone? Yes, I'm sorry. I've binned it off, guys. Change! We're going back to vintage T-shirt George here at this point now. We're kicking the waistcoat into touch. We've devolved here at this point. But yeah, no. It's just, obviously, it was a nice experiment. Nice to have a bit of fun with, obviously, with the waistcoats. I've still got them. You never know. They might come back. But yeah, I've got, obviously, a truckload of them in my wardrobe. DRS has been disabled, though, Dan Field. So there we have it. Torrential conditions. We are firmly in intermediate tyre conditions.
If we're digressing anymore, George, we might have to go back to the CRG T-shirts that you
I have got them. I have got them.
I always wanted one, you know, but
you're too late. You're too late, Danfield. You're too late.
A bit late now, unfortunately.
No comrade gaming for you, mate. Unfortunately, but yes, Q2 back underway now here in qualifying. 13 minutes and 30 to go, and no signs of this rain stopping one iota. Every single car is out on track. And do you know what that tells me, Danfield? It tells me that they're expecting these conditions to get worse.
Oh, yes. It's a bit of a worry when the conditions get even worse in regards to the intermediates. I mean, these guys, they are at the top of their game, George, but, you know, it is very difficult to drive in the full wet conditions. And if they're all out this early to get a lap time, I think that shows no signs of the rain letting up. So, George, you're absolutely right in that regard. As Freddie Rasmussen gets his lap on the board, we're a far cry from the dry conditions of what we saw in the first session. These guys got to tiptoe their way through the center S's, but down this straight, it's still very much the same without the DRS. Foot flat to the floor in the first sector.
Yeah, absolutely right. Coming through now out of the initial corners, out of turn 5 into Cidia de Largo. We're right on board with Freddie Rasmussen. Heading in towards turn 6 now at the Ferradura. This looks like it could have been a distinctly timed, well-timed lap here from Freddie. Trying to make sure he's in the less concerning conditions. Obviously, they try and maximise their pace around a very tricky track like the Interlagos circuit here with... it's distinct cornering. There's, of course, 6 corners that are left-hand corners, 10 right-hand corners, 16 in total as they now climb the hill leading up towards Junchao. You just see how much Freddie is on the limit here as he now makes his way up the hill and then through the Archibancada. You'll rest assured that the trickiest section of track is now officially all home and host as he now comes up towards the line. The question is, how much worse can these conditions get? Towards the line, 1:13.621. I don't think by any means that'll be the fastest, though, because we are seeing some faster times come through, including that of Jarno Watmir. Purple in the second sector, and it is enough to go fastest. He's so good in the wet, and that's a 1:13.394 for the Flying Dutchman.
George, that's the second week in a row that now Jarno Watmir is really marveling in these wet conditions in qualifying. Of course, last time out in Mexico, Jarno took pole in the wet, and it could be the same story here in Brazil as more times come out onto the board. A few more guys crossing the line. Danny Bergely slotted himself very nicely into P3, just a hundredth or so behind Ismail Fassi. Got Fabrizio Donoso, Shanaka Clay in that final sector as well. And have these guys been hindered by going out too late? Is there too much rain on the circuit to really nestle in a good time there? As Fabi, I think, was invalid on his run. Shanaka only P11.
Yeah, I'm telling you now. At this point, I've got my beady eyes are currently watching every single moment on this timing tower, and I get the feeling these conditions. Going back to what I was saying about Freddie going out so early and being the first out. I think, dare I say it, the conditions are taking a bit of a downwards turn, and at this moment in time, Pedreño has got it all to do because he, like Fabrizio Donoso, has not yet set a valid time. He has done an 18.3 in the first sector, a 38.2 though in sector 2. Now, I don't know how this is going to compare with everybody else, but I feel like this could be quite a degree slower. We'll soon find out. And yes, he's coming into the pits. Goodness me, it's a very busy pit lane, but has that rain hampered Pedreño, Donoso, and could it yet hamper Clay, Ido, and Caraton? That's the big question.
I mean, Ruben Pedreño, I was watching him on his run, George, and he was struggling so hard, especially at the end of that second sector where you really have to be aggressive with the throttle to maximize your speed, and Ruben just could not get the loud pedal down. It was a difficult lap for him there. Interestingly enough, Fabrizio Donoso going once again on this set of intermediate tires, so we'll see what he can do as he starts his second attempt of the session. He is the lone car out on circuit now with it all to do, all the way down in P14 and no time on the board.
No, not at all. Be keeping a close eye on what Sector 1 looks like. I can tell you that the fastest first sector time was set by Luke Smith. And look at this. Yes, I think the conditions are getting worse here at this point, Dan. Donoso overcooking it, heading in towards turn 4 and 5 at Decidia de Largo. And unfortunately, whilst that isn't an invalidation for Donoso, it does mean that he has lost so much time, and you can just see him there fighting to retain control of the car. We're right on board with him just so we can get an insight into how it looks from where the driver is situated. Coming through, and you just see there, the underneath the car is just so understeery at this point here, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Fabrizio Donoso is having a very difficult time on this lap of 57.0 in the first and second sector, struggling as he gets a big snap of oversteer off the exit of that final braking zone. Fabrizio Donoso not looking comfortable on this lap. He will dart back into the pit lane. Dare I say it, that's qualifying over for him.
Yeah, Donoso obviously aware that he cannot improve on his well, he hasn't even set a lap, but he can't put in a lap that's necessarily representative against those that have already set in times. Now, if you want to hear something really tremendous, just to signify how good Jarno Opmeer is in the wet here at this point, I can tell you that his lap is over 1.5 tenths faster than Ismail Fassi, which might not sound a lot, but in the world of league racing, in the world of the F1 game, where usually we see the top 5 all within 1/10 of a second, Jarno Opmeer 1.5 tenths clear up at the very top, which has to be said, just goes to show how good he is in these damp conditions.
It really does. I mean, Jarno Opmeer, he is the rain man here in the world of PSGL and F1 esports, and he's doing a stellar job once again here in Brazil. But no discredit to any of the drivers who have been able to get a very nice time on the board. Ismail Fassi, Danny Berejnay, Jake Benham, great times coming out from them there. And as this session goes on, you got to think maybe they're actually going to stay exactly that way. That being said, though, George, plenty of drivers coming out onto the circuit with other attempts to bet on their lap. Freddie Rasmussen is on a run at the minute, but he is down in the first sector, which really does just go to show how the conditions change so quickly on this F1 esports F1 23 game. But Freddie Rasmussen not being deterred, along with many other drivers making their way out onto the circuit.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Freddie Rasmussen right now, I think it's more about getting the track time in, and obviously I'm not sure where the conditions are going to go in, should we say, Q3, or indeed the race. I'm sure we'll find that out as time goes on, but Freddie Rasmussen, I think, just trying to get some track time in, just trying to make sure that he's up to speed. For some of these drivers, the time it takes between going from week to week, from, say, Wednesday to Wednesday, I know that many of them compete in other leagues as well, but at the same time, it's very rare you're in a situation like this when you're in a lobby, a competitive race lobby, or indeed in qualifying, where you can take full advantage and essentially get some minutes out on track. Especially if you're, focused on the F1 esports season, you might be doing different types of practice. You might not necessarily be practicing for PSGL. So this is an opportunity for the likes of Freddie Rasmussen, Otis Lawrence. Well, not necessarily for Otis. I'd imagine he would have PSGL firmly emblazoned as his priority. But when you're Danny Berejnay, Freddie Rasmussen, Jarno Opmeer, if you're competing in F1 esports, you might not necessarily be practicing solely for league racing. So this is a chance for them to really take as much track time as they can in order to be fully prepared for Q3 and then as a consequence the race.
Absolutely, and of course in the wet it's normally the conditions that drivers don't actually tend to practice for, so definitely all the track time that you can have out on circuit really is going to be important for you in these intermediate conditions, just in the hopes that it stays this way as multiple other drivers still out on circuit. Otis Lawrence, I've been watching him, of course, very proficient in qualifying. The best qualifier that we have on the grid at the minute so far this season. Hasn't been able to replicate that fully in terms of the race pace from him there, but I'm expecting good things from Otis Lawrence, who said on Twitter today, George, that he was going to be eliminated in Q1. Lo and behold, look at him here in Q2.
Yeah, he's gone above and beyond, it has to be said, and currently situated in the top 10 as well. The conditions are definitely his friend here at the very least, and by the looks of it, I can't see his time being nullified by anybody. Ruben Pedreño still out on track, but unfortunately for him, I think he's going to come under a lot of pressure. Fabrizio Donoso, who has set times in the first and second sector, no doubt looking to register at least something on the board. Unless, of course, he decides to box, which he could well and truly do. No, he is going to come across the line. Let's see if he can find something in these closing stages. Enough for 14th fastest, goes faster than Ruben Pedreño, but the conditions just really setting in and making things difficult for the Chilean.
Yeah, it really didn't look like a bad lap at all. I mean, I actually thought he was pretty confident, and I was hoping that for Richard Anoso was going to be able to find a decent amount of time, maybe find himself into the next session of qualifying. Luke Smith retiring in the pit lane. I'd imagine a few more guys are going to follow suit. There's no real threat at the minute in terms of their grid position. So the top 10, George, looks to be set at the minute, unless something drastic happens. Shanaka Clay, Josh Adowu, Alvaro Carreton for Richard Anoso, and Ruben Pedreño will be shown the door in qualifying.
Yep, purple sectors currently split between 3 different drivers. The first sector being achieved by Luke Smith. The second sector being held by Jarno Opmeer at the very top. So that middle sector very key in Jarno's first position lap. Let me just say most of his time was indeed found in sector 2 in comparison to Ismail Fassi in second place. In P7, purple third sector going to Thomas Ronhar as well. So still a very competitive session, despite the gap being quite vast between the top 2. So definitely more to come, I think, when we head into Q3. I'd be very interested to see whether they all retire early. Shanaka Clay, though, taking some track time for himself. Currently situated in 11th place, though this won't necessarily grant him a position in Q3. The conditions are just simply getting too rough, just too much for the drivers, and removing some key delta for them to gain in order to gain a spot in Q3. I'd say it's all said and done here, Dan.
Yeah, if there's a will, there's a way, though, George. And maybe Shanaka, just maybe, George, he can find 300ths of a second, even less than that, actually, to close the gap to Ben Javakonyi and maybe just nestle himself into the next session. I am a hopeful guy, but it's going to look very difficult for Shanaka on this run. We'll see what he's able to do. A few more drivers actually exiting the pit lane now and coming out onto the circuit. Danny Bergene being one of them. There's a Red Bull of Josh Adowu, and then the Mercedes of Jarno Opmeer. It really does just, it is actually incredible to see his gap to everyone else on the grid. 13.3, and the closest driver to him, Ismail Fassi, on a 13.5. It's unbelievable how good he is in the wet.
Yeah, well, we're now running on board with Shanaka Clay, and last chance saloon here to improve on his previous time. Coming through the center S's now and just feathering that throttle. Very risky taking the curves. I don't think this is necessarily a push lap, and I think the reasoning for that is because he's coming out into traffic, so I think he knows he's a little out of sync. Probably wasn't expecting the amount of traffic to come out like it has done in the closing laps, but nevertheless, last chance saloon. I find it interesting, though, here, Dan, that they're all coming out. Otis might not be safe here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Why are they all out on circuit? Have the conditions got a little bit better as this session has gone on? Have we seen the rain peak and now it's becoming a little bit drier out on circuit? Not by much, but to some degree. We just don't know at this point, George, as now more laps are beginning to be started. Danny Bergene will cross the line, and we'll see what he can do as he gets this lap underway.
Yeah, heading through now towards the center S's in at turn 1. He'll then send him through towards Curva de Sol at turn 3. And just look at the aquaplaning he's getting. Heading out to that S section now, bursting down the long straight. No DRS to help him with straight line speed, but nonetheless he'll have plenty of it heading in towards turn 4. And Decidia Delago. Confirmation of a 5-place grid penalty for Ben Javakonyi, but that will not matter because he will, of course, have a restart to the lobby as we now head through towards the right-hander at the Ferradura at turn 6. Into the next right, and then he'll meet the Pinorino at turn 9 as well out of Pico de Pato as they now head through towards the latter sector. He's coming towards the end now of sector 2, and we'll see where the times do compare. I'll be very intrigued to see it. Already I'm looking, 18-1 in the first sector was Danny Beregene's best first sector time. I'm just seeing if we get any improvements on the timing screen. Not seeing much right now, but we'll soon see where he is. He's not improving at all in the first or second sectors in accordance to my screen, but it could all change come the very end as now the McLaren makes its way up through towards the line. What can the Hungarian muster? Can he improve at all from P3? No, he can't, though he did find an improvement, Danfield, in the final sector, a 17.8.
There's hope for some of these other drivers further back down the order that there is, they could potentially find a slight improvement and jump ahead of their
Shanaka
rivals.
has.
My eyes are on Shanaka Clay.
He has improved.
Oh my word.
Shanaka's
up by 400.
Yeah, he's up by 400. So let me tell you, 18-2 in the first sector. So he's looking really strong right now. A really fine display here so far from Clay in the dying moments of the session. Ruben Pedreño has also personally improved as well. First two sectors looking good as now the Alpine makes its way up towards the line. Can he get himself out of the drop zone here at this late stage? No, only enough for 14th fastest, but it's all about Shanaka Clay, who has got some lovely drag leading up towards the line. No, he can't find it. The first sector was an improvement, the third sector was an improvement, but he lost time in Sector 2, Danfield.
And I did say it, I was hoping that Shanaka Clay could find his way just ahead into the next session. Unfortunate there, I think maybe that Williams car in front of him of Alvaro Carreton might have proved to be a little bit of traffic, and unfortunate that is the way his session comes to an end. And missing out on Q3 by just a few hundredths of a second, but he is joined by some very talented drivers in that drop zone. But George, what a Q3 we are touted for here.
Yeah, we definitely are that. Jarno Opmeer, the fastest driver in Q2. Back in the wet, no one could stop him. He was 1.5 tenths clear plus of Ismail Fassi in second, Danny Berejnay in third, Jake Benham in fourth. Good day so far for Mercedes. Luke Smith in fifth. Further down, we have Freddie Rasmussen in sixth place, Thomas Ronhaar in seventh. We got Otis Lawrence in eighth place, Alfie Butcher in ninth. We got Ben Chabo-Conyi in 10th, and then the eliminees are, of course, Shanaka Clay, Josh Ido, Alvaro Carreton, Ruben Pedreño, and Fabrizio Donoso. They will not be heading through into Q3. But we have got a mouth-watering qualifying session still to come and in prospect. But Jarno Opmeer, unanswerable at the top. A well-timed lap. Did it when he needed it. Well, when he needed it, should we say, Dan?
Yeah, one run, and that was enough for him. Jarno Opmeer with a fantastic run in Q2. Can he replicate that coming in towards the final parts of Q3 when it really does matter, when he needs to get that pole time? I mean, we'll have to wait and see, George. I'm really excited to see the last 12 minutes of qualifying here, setting us up for what is going to be a fantastic race later on.
Now, whilst it looks all quiet on the Western Front, I think it's going to be quiet for quite a time here in Q3, Danfield, because the rain is due to officially stop in 5 minutes' time. So we're in a session that goes on for 12 minutes. I don't think we'll see a single driver out on track until 6 minutes are left to go here at this point. So this is a game of chess now here in Q3. And obviously this is the pole shootout. So drama to come, folks. Drama to come. Q3, pole shootout. Let us know in the live chat who's going to take it. You've got a choice here between Luke Smith, Freddie Rasmussen, Jarno Opmeer, Danny Berejnay, Jake Benham, Ben Chabo-Conyi, Otis Lawrence, Ismail Fassi, Thomas Ronhaar, and Alfie Butcher. So let us know in the live chat, and we'll read them out as we go. Dan, where can you see this going?
Oh, Georgia, am I allowed to be boring for one race? I mean, I always try and like to mix it up. Am I allowed to be boring and pick the obvious choice here?
Well, I mean, choose it. It might not be the obvious choice. We don't know yet.
You know what? I won't go for it. I'll go with Jake Benham to take pole positions today above his teammate. I mean,
You're chicken, Danfield. Incredible. Unbelievable. Thank you ever so much, everybody, for getting involved as well. I can see Gaming Fanatics has gone for Danny for pole. You wouldn't be misplaced in saying that. And look at that. Lo and behold, DRS enabled,
wow.
Danfield.
Yeah, we've already got some activity out on circuit. It's my prediction for pole position. And you know what, George? That shows confidence from the All-Star to come out this early when the track... Yeah, the track is still drying. This is a man that knows he can put it on pole.
Well,
oh my God.
Listen, I mean, we look back at Jake Benham's performances through the course of this season. Winner back at Silverstone. And might I add, it was one of the most dramatic wins of the season, was it not?
Oh my God, that British Grand Prix, that is ingrained in my memory.
I love it. It's probably one of my most favourite races, I think, in PSGL history. Yeah. I think many people would agree with that, though I'm sure we've had quite a few of them, in fact, this season. I mean, we look back at Saudi Arabia, Dan, and that was a classic.
I think I got to put Saudi above Britain. I mean, Britain was a fantastic race, and Jake Benham always is appreciated to get a win. But that run to the line on the final lap with 3 cars separated by less than a tenth, I don't know if we're ever going to see scenes like that. But Tell you what though, George, a circuit like Brazil, we can actually see some pretty close runs up to the line. So maybe, just maybe tonight, we're going to see some similar scenes to Saudi Arabia.
We could well do. First of all, though, let's ride on board with your selection for pole here, Danfield. He's coming straight into the pits. That is how... Do you know what? He heard you say that you tipped him. And as a result, he said, right, I'm having none of this. I'm coming straight back into the pits.
Yeah, he doesn't want us to watch him on a lap. So Jake Benham just coming out, testing the waters. I saw a lot of spray coming off the back of his Mercedes, which really does indicate the track conditions are not up to standard. And it is actually a bit questionable why the likes of Freddie Rasmussen and Ishmael Fassi now exiting out on the circuit. They're essentially burning up a set of the softs on the outlap, which they can't really use towards the end of the session. Of course, they've been able to save sets due to the rain being present in Q1 and Q2, well actually just in Q2, but even so, you want to save every bit of tyre that you can.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's probably not that intelligent, is it, to use up your soft tyres so early in the session, especially when you're not at an optimal level on track. I mean, according to my telemetry, the track is currently at 27 degrees. We generally see it optimal around 30 degrees, so wouldn't it make more sense to remain in the pit lane for another couple of minutes or so?
I don't see really why they shouldn't be staying in the pit lane. Of course, Jake Benham has just come back into the pits, but he is exiting right away onto the circuit. It's only Jarno Opmeer and Thomas Ronhart. Jarno Opmeer is actually just exiting onto the circuit now. It's Jarno Opmeer and Thomas Ronhart deciding to stay in the pit lane for the time being. But I guess they know a lot more than you and I, George. I mean, I don't really see the point in it at the minute. Maybe the track conditions will get better and better. Maybe they don't need all the sets of compounds that they've used, they've saved so far in this session.
It might be the case they are using used tyres. I'm not quite sure. I mean, obviously you want to at least register a banker. It's got to be used tyres, you would have thought. But as we now ride on board here with Freddie Rasmussen, who's making his way up towards the line, obviously we'll have to wait and see whether these are the used set. We will find out. Heading down through towards turn 1 now. Freddie will open up that rear wing and head down through towards the first corner at the Centre S. He's coming out of turn 2 now in towards turn 3. And then he'll beckon his way through the Curva de Sol, down the long straight, through the Retta Aposta. DRS once again opened up to Ciudad del Lago at turns 4 and 5. Purple in the first sector as you'd expect, given that this is the first representative lap that we have seen so far in the session. There's now the Red Bull pirouettes. Heading through towards turn 6 of the Ferradura this time. Trying to hook it up. Great opportunity for the Great Dane here, Danfield.
Yeah, absolutely, as he now takes to the very technical second sector. This is where it's going to be very difficult in these slick to wet conditions, but Freddie Rasmussen handling it very beautifully. There's no real spray on the tyres on the back of that Red Bull, so it looks like the track conditions with every passing second are getting better. And now Freddie in towards the final sector here. It's a 53.940 through the first and second sector, and we'll see what the benchmark is as he approaches the line now.
Yeah, coming up towards the line now, Freddie Rasmussen looking to enlist his first time in Q3. Quite late in the day as well when you consider we've only got around 5 minutes and 40 to go. Goes fastest as you'd expect, a 1:11.192. No doubt the track will be finding more improvements. We have indeed got as well his teammate, I'm going to say his teammate, it's not his teammate, but it's the team in blue, Ishmael Fassi going second fastest. 1:11.856. And we do have a purple first sector from Alfie Butcher as well. So improvements in line for many other cars across this grid order. As now we see Luke Smith now making his way up towards the line. Now, can he unseat Freddie Rasmussen or Ishmael Fassi? Go second fastest, enough to go higher than the Williams. Now, we're looking on our screens. Haas actually looking incredibly strong right now. Ben Charbonnet has just taken the purple second sector. Someone who is also part of the fabric of the Haas team as a reserve and test driver for them. Danny Berejnet going second fastest. Ben Charbonnet, though, going to the top. His teammate as well will be looking to join him. One Alfie Butcher, the F1 Esports Challengers champion, as Jake Benham goes fastest. Here comes the Butcher now. Enough to go top with a 1:10.596 as we see him now curtail through turn 1. Jarno Opmeer has just stolen the purple first sector, and he's looking in good form to take a purple second sector, maybe even a third here as well, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, quickest in the second qualifying session, and now he's looking in some fine form now in the dry conditions. Here comes the Flying Dutchman looking for his first win here at Brazil in PSGL. Can you believe it? He's off to a good start in Q3 with a 1 minute 10.403, and with the first initial lap times on the board, George, with every second the track is getting better, and this is going to be one big game of chicken, and it is who is going to be the last one out on circuit, and it's a balancing act they have to play
by
getting the best track condition. Hello?
Hold the phone. Hello? Yes, of course. So you say hold the phone. Hello. Brilliant. Otis Lawrence has just taken purple in the opening 2 sectors, but has backed out of it. Heartbreak for the Welshman. He has just backed out of it. He set a 17.4 in Sector 1. He registered then as 35.7 in accordance to my timing screen, which apparently, according to the telemetry, was enough for purple, but has come straight into the pit. He looked like he was on trend to break Jarno Opmeer's time. Otis Lawrence, though, making a key mistake. It looked like he made a mistake coming through the second sector into the third, and as a consequence, has come straight back into the pits. He's got to reassess, but some promising signs there for Otis Lawrence.
Yeah, I think you've just gone straight to voicemail there, George, unfortunately.
Fantastic.
Otis Lawrence back into the pit lane with Jarno Opmeer in tow, and that makes 10 drivers into the pits. And as I was saying, with the track conditions getting better with every passing second, it means that you want to be the last man out on circuit, but you really cannot afford to miss that that timing line, because if you don't get that lap before the clock strikes 0, of course you're not going to get a run. You're going to be on a 1 minute 10 or 11 and be almost a lock, I'd say, for P10 on the grid. So these guys have to play their timing perfect.
Yeah, they certainly do, as we now await them all to come back out again. We say a big hello back again to you lot at home. Let us know who you think is going to take pole here in the shootout. Already we've seen the initial times. Jarno Opmeer back on top. Mercedes 1 and 3 currently in the timing screens, but look at Haas 2nd and 4th. So we got quite a goated grid here, taking us through the final session of qualifying. Let us know in the live chat who you think is going to take it. I can already see that people are saying that Thomas Ronhaar is going to get pole. Jason opting for that. That's the usual tip that we see week after week. Good to see Jason back, as always, taking the heat off us in the live chat, which is lovely to see. Let's also see Shanaka Clay being tipped. Unfortunately, he did not make it through by the skin of his teeth, unfortunately, just missing out. Ishmael is going to clutch, says Yip Sivius. We got Jarno, Epol, Jarno, everyone's saying Jarno as well. We can already see it in the live chat. Keep them coming, folks. Why is Blakely not racing anymore? Care to answer that question, Danfield?
I think his cat was asleep or something in his chair. I'm not too sure. I forgot to be. I think he's just taking a break, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical, isn't it? I mean, we generally hear Blakely tends to take part in the initial start of the game cycle in league racing. That is why we generally see him then. But obviously, generally, a lot of the drivers tend to focus more on the actual F1 Esports Championship, which is fair enough. Different priorities, different strokes for different folks. But yeah, a few people tipping Jake Benham as well. I'm being tipped for pole as well, Dan, but I'm pole every week, so it's fine. And we're seeing a Ben Jabo masterclass saying Kyrie Burner as well. So keep them coming, folks. We want to hear from you. Jarno Goatmere, we're seeing some more tips for him too. Jake the Goat, he's going to win. He could yet do it. Do not count him out. Danfield, I'm going to ask you again, are you sticking with Jake Benham?
Yeah, of course, I'm a man of my word. I'm going with Jake Benham to the very end, and I'm a bit worried with all these grid penalties coming out, George, because even though they are just a bug in the game and they don't actually mean anything, if you get 3 of them, you actually get disqualified from this session. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen to any of our drivers, as Thomas Ronhaar is the first one to begin his lap, George, coming across the line. He's got all the... Oh, there it is, Ben Jabakoni, as I said, disqualified now from qualifying.
There you have it, folks. That is obviously the risk factor when it comes down to grid penalties, and unfortunately it means that Ben Jabokoni will not be able to field a faster lap here in the closing stages. But we're now watching Thomas Ronhaar, who has just gone purple in the first sector with a 16.891 here so far, looking very strong here at this point. Now we're right on board here with the Dutchman. Of course, has gone close already before to win a PSGL crown. Looked to have done it as well back at Yas Marina, but unfortunately could not pull it off after a decision in the stewards room, in the PSGL stewards room, that led to Barry Burman taking the title. And it was confirmed the day after the race was concluded now as we see Ronha make his way up towards Jun Chao here for the final time. Turn 12, electrified here for the Alfa Romeo team as now Ronha looking to unleash his pace this time around, going in tight to the inside as they do tend to like doing here at Brazil. Across the line, goes fastest now. So Thomas Ronha setting in the initial benchmark and enough that could yet grant him pole as we see yet more drivers come across the line. Otis Lawrence not enough to improve. A blistering lap though from Luke Smith in the closing sectors. We got more cars coming through though. Lawrence only enough for third. Berejnay goes fastest so far as well. Yarno up mid across the line. Butcher goes fastest here at this stage. Luke Smith purple in the first two sectors. He's just taken pole here at Brazil, Danfield.
Luke Smith on pole position, the last man across the line, and he was the quickest of them all by 1.5 tenths of a second ahead of Alfie Butcher. What an effort from Luke Smith there in the Alpine. We know how proficient he is in qualifying, and he's delivered once again, and that is a fantastic lap to put him on the top spot here in Brazil.
Yep, Luke Smith fastest in qualifying. He's on pole. Alfie Butcher enough for second place. Jarno Opmeer in third, with Danny Berejnay in fourth, Freddie Rasmussen in fifth, Thomas Ronha in sixth, Jake Benham in seventh, Ishmael Fassi in eighth, Otis Lawrence in ninth spot, and Benjab Okonie, who got disqualified for the illegal blocking. That was very unfortunate indeed for him. I have to say, very disappointing for Benjab Okonie, who had every chance after his blistering pace in the first two sessions of qualifying, undone by an unfortunate glitch, unfortunately, which has set him back. But nevertheless, a very smart play, I would say, from Luke Smith, Dan, because yes, he was the last car across the line, and he also had the slipstream heading down the home straight.
Yeah, and that has worked out perfectly in his favour. Now starting from P1 ahead of Alfie Butcher. Great efforts from the pair of them. We'll see what happens come race time. We're going to have the quick lobby restart that we normally see, George, but that gives us a little bit more time to digest what we've witnessed in qualifying there. But if it's anything like we saw, if the race is anything like what we saw in qualifying, we're in for yet another worldie here in PSGL tonight.
We certainly are. Incredible, it has to be said. And tell you what, we're going to be in for a real treat, folks. We're about to see yet another classic race, I think, in PSGL. But first of all, before we do that, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, to PSGL, brought to you and powered by GT Omega and SRC Sim Racing Centre. Great to have them on board as well. We're just about to go racing here at Brazil once again now after a sensational qualifying session where we've witnessed certainly lots of drama, lots of action, nonetheless some surprise eliminees as well from the initial stages of qualifying. And some changeable conditions as well, Dan, and that always brings about a sensational race as well. No doubt, could we see the return of the rain, do you think?
We could, of course, with these lobby restarts, they are mandatory regardless of whether or not we get those unfortunate glitches which disqualify Benjab Okonie. It is mandatory anyways, and that comes with dynamic weather. So we saw when we loaded into the lobby, George, I don't know if you caught it, but it was nice and sunny. That might not be the conditions that we face come race time, and Brazil definitely has the potential to be wet, like we've just seen in that qualifying session gone now. So we'll have to wait and see in a few minutes' time once we load into the lobby. Regardless of the conditions, though, George, this race touted to be amazing.
Yeah, I think we're going to be in for a real treat. Already the lobby currently being worked on, guys. It won't be long before we head trackside, but obviously Jarno Opmeer, he's only going to have one thing on his mind as well. He may not have got pole on this occasion, but Dan, twice a winner now back-to-back in the last 2 races, 3 wins so far this season. The momentum is surely stacked in his favour, and he'll be looking at the next 5 races as an opportunity to close out this title and his 5th title to boot.
I mean, Jarno Opmeer is doing a fantastic job in the championship already without this race in hand at the minute. 25 points clear of Thomas Ronhart at the very top of the order. He's having a sensational time at the minute. A little bit of controversy last time out in Mexico. It ended up with an Opmeer victory. Thomas Ronhart finished in second. That is the second time this season they've actually finished 1 and 2 as title rivals. But you're absolutely right in terms of the momentum. It's going to play a key factor in this race, and we know how talented Jarno Opmeer is when it comes to race trim. So even though starting on the second row of the grid behind Luke Smith and Alfie Butcher, do not count him out for even 1 second, George.
No, you do not want to count him out at all, folks. And if you're tuning in as well, just to say live with us, remember, we are live on both YouTube and Twitch. So a big hello to our audiences on both platforms. If you're watching us on Twitch, why not help us out by hitting that follow button? Make sure you stay up to date with everything going on in PSGL, and you'll get to see us as soon as we go live. And of course, we've got other tiers, other platforms, other divisions that go live here as well on the Twitch platform. So make sure you stay up to date with when we do. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button and also hit the like button as well. We've also got social media accounts that you guys can check out to stay up to date with all the latest PSGL news. That includes Twitter at PremierSimGL. That is the tag, and it's the same on Instagram as well. And there's also a TikTok where, of course, you can see some of the clips and some of the tasty moments that occur throughout the course of the season campaign. You can also be a part of the Discord as well. There is a Discord server that you can also join and become part of the community. And if you ever fancy racing in PSGL, when the sign-up window opens, you can, of course, get involved. But here now, we're about to watch a stellar race. Opportunities in abundance. Jarno Opmeer could yet take his first ever Brazilian Grand Prix victory in PSGL, or it could be the return of one of the former greats. We do, of course, have Barry Burman on the grid, despite starting from the back due to the fact that they retired early in qualifying in Q1. Obviously, Thomas Ronhart with a great chance as well off the back of qualifying for Q3. Danny Berejne, you never know, he might come back and win after winning it back in Season 30. Of course, Alvaro Carreton, the original winner back in Season 27 in our very first season of PSGL PCF1 action. Also here tonight. Could he yet come back with a victory? It might be a bit of a hard task for Carreton, but anything can happen here at PSGL. So with that all stacked up here, Dan, we could yet see a return winner, or we could see someone totally brand new.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different narratives around the F1 grid at the minute, and there's just so many different guys you could really put in the hat and just pick one out. They're probably going to be the winner by the end of it. I mean, it's so difficult to predict at the minute, given how much talent is actually been stacked up onto this one grid. Arguably, it's the best we've seen all season. Danny Berejne is back. Aston Martin have their full strength lineup of Simon Weigand and Fabrizio Donoso. So much talent throughout the grid. Both the Ferraris are here, starting right at the back. You don't know where to look, and it is so difficult to know who's coming out on top.
Yeah, Dan, I mean, obviously, we want to talk about some of the new drivers as well. I mean, I'm looking at the likes of Ismail Fassi, someone who, of course, has not yet won a PSGL race this season, but in other accounts, has taken 2 podiums as well. And we hark back to that sensational race at Canada, where he had his opportunity, could not quite muster it, but an important P2. He's 3rd in the championship. You know, his time's coming soon, surely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I told you in the Saudi Arabian race that in the next 1 or 2, maybe 3 seasons, I think Ismail Fassi is either contending or is PSGL champion. And I think the same degree goes to the F1 Esports Series when that does return. Ismail Fassi, he will be there. He's one of the youngest guys on the grid, and he's already competing at the very highest level. You got to invest very early because, the stock price is going up in terms of Ismail Fassi, and I think he is one to keep your eye on for the future.
Yeah, it was one of the surprise packages for Williams as well, back at Bahrain in F1 Esports, and really adapted to the LAN environment so quickly. And we look back at some of the great moments he's brought us as well, Saudi Arabia being one of them, where he may not have got the result he would have desired. He had every chance, though. He was on a very good strategy, just could not quite unlock it like Jarno did. But nonetheless, some of those moves, it just oozed confidence from a young driver, Dan. And everyone has got a right to fear the incredible, fierce potential that Ismail Fassi retains.
Oh, yeah, he is one to look out for. And I was talking about it earlier as well in qualifying that the future of F1 Esports and the Sim Racing Series is in very safe hands. We have bags of talent looking to bring us in to the next 4, maybe 5 years of competitive racing, if it does come to that. And I'm very excited to be there from the very early point onwards. And I've seen already someone asking, start when? George, we're in the lobby. We're getting ready to go.
We certainly are. Sun shining, at least for now, here at Brazil. So let us know in the live chat. We want to hear from you. Who is going to take victory here at Brazil? Will Jarno Opmeer take his very first Brazil victory here in PSGL? I tell you what, lots of narratives, lots of stories, and this is going to be the biggest story of them all. Will we see another instant classic here at PSGL with 5 races to go to decide a champion? I personally can't wait. Let us know in the live chat. I'm going to hold you to your word now, Danfield. Who's taking the race win at Brazil?
I'm going for win number 4 of the season. I think it's the good choice to go for. Jarno Opmeer to take his first victory around Brazil. I was wrong in qualifying. Maybe I could have gone Jarno Opmeer. Still wouldn't have been right. But I think come today, he's going to do it in the race.
Danfield has spoken, folks. The question is, do you agree? I'm seeing plenty of names flittering in the live chat as well. Let Jarno cook. I'm seeing that. I could also see as well Postman Pat for the win. I can tell you that him and Jess aren't here, unfortunately. Jarno as well saying Sisu Sutari. Who else have we got? Jarno for the win, says Jatim Panguru. Who else have we got? Stephen Karut also saying Jarno. Jake will sacrifice for Jarno. Will he, though? Will it be Silverstone this time again? Will it be Jake Benham's turn to take a victory? We'll have to wait and find out. The dude can drive says, come on, Jarno the GOAT. Yes for Postman Pat again. Crikey, he's got some supporters. Brendan Lee says F1 Biarbs. What else have we got? Give me Ronha, says Frin Network as well. Keep them coming, folks. We want to hear from you. Keep those messages. Keep flooding that live chat. Come on, let's have some. As now we're about to go racing here with all 5 lights lit here at Interlagos, and it's pedal to the metal, and it is go, 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 go. Great start indeed for Luke Smith, but is it as good as Alfie Butcher, who once again brings down his carving knife through turn 1? The Hasno leads here at Interlagos. Second place for Luke Smith. Jarno Opmeer carving through the field, goes third fastest. Danny Berejne now in 4th with Freddie Rasmussen in mind as well. Shanaka Clay trying to break into the top 10 as he fiercely tries to batter away at Otis Lawrence. Incredible fights across the grid, but Alfie Butcher, he's OP. He leads going into turn 1 here, Danfield.
Jake Benham around the outside of Freddie Rasmussen, the pair of them on the soft compounder tyres now, looking to brutalise Danny Berejne around the outside for the Red Bull drive. A little bit of contact between the pair of them and in towards Bico de Pato, almost 3 wide. Freddie Rasmussen on the inside of the pair of them. Who's going to come out on top? There's still wheel to wheel between Danny and Freddie is into the final sector. Defending like a lion is the Hungarian, and how about that? He's staving off the attacks of Jake Benham and Freddie Rasmussen, heading now in towards lap number 2.
Yeah, and this is not ideal at all for Jake Benham. He needs to try and break through this plethora of hard tyre cars. Look at the strategies. We're split between hard tyres and softs as now Danny Berejne looks to go side by side with Rasmussen again, coming through turn 1. This time, though, Rasmussen's got the advantage. Will retain it, heading down this long straight. He needs that advantage as well because Berejne on hard tyres is going to do his best to upset that soft tyre strategy as they go around the outside. He's getting eaten up by every single soft tyre known to man. He is falling down the field. Those hards not working for him early on here, Dan.
Yeah, Shanaka and Bench now have found that position on him, and Thomas Ronhart coming under pressure from Alvaro Carreton, so it's clear from the offset that those soft tyres working very, very well, as now Alvaro around the outside of Thomas Ronhart. No, not really much that Thomas can do. He will drop outside of the top 10. It's been a very difficult start in this Grand Prix for him. Otis Lawrence has had a difficult getaway, as both the Ferrari drivers are doing battle further back behind. Everywhere you look, George, there's some battling, but at the front of the order, Alfie Butcher 1.7 seconds clear of Luke Smith. It's been a dream getaway for the Haas man.
Yeah, this is ideal, I would say, for Butcher right now. He's got 1.8 between he and Luke Smith. He's got 2 drivers on hard tyres that are behind him. The one thing I will say is that strategically right now, Luke Smith and Jarno Opmeer are in the pound seats, because later on in the race, they'll be able to go onto a faster set of tyres, and they'll have their chance, as now we see the cars make their way down the stretch. Now, here comes Jarno, opening up that rear wing, choosing not to make the move on Luke Smith. Will probably be more comfortable retaining DRS, but I suppose what he'll be saying is, come on, Luke, get a move on. We need to start maximising our delta here. The question is as well, will Jarno use Jake Benham and his soft tyres in order to get a useful tow?
Yeah, potentially. Jarno could allow for Jake Benham to go on through and then slipstream off the back of his teammate. We'll have to wait and see what happens. Heading on towards lap number 4 already. The laps are flying down, but what I think is going to happen, the 2 Mercedes will go either which way on Luke Smith, and he is going to have no defense defending from these 2 black arrows. We'll see what they can do off the exit of Junsao now. A little bit of battery being utilized by Jake Benham and Jarno Opmeer. They're on the attack here, George.
Yeah, and the thing is, I get the feeling that they need to release Jake as well, but Jarno now going for P2 here, around the outside. Very smooth move here on Luke Smith so far. Jake Benham also falling in behind as well. Now the question is, does Opmeer allow Jake Benham through? This is their opportunity to do so. Luke Smith knows that this is a particularly dangerous game that Mercedes are playing here, which could yet upset the balance of his race as well. DRS open for both the Mercedes in behind Jarno and Luke Smith in behind. No switches so far. So Opmeer not willing to yet give that position to Jake, but they've got to remember those soft tyres will die off as time goes on.
It's a smart thing to do, though. I mean, those softs are still going to be in good working condition for the majority of the beginning portion of this Grand Prix. Why not allow for Jake Benham to go on through Jarno and then slipstream off the back of him, catch up to Alfie Butcher, and then maybe mount a challenge when those soft tyres have completely died off. These are things to think about for these guys as this race continues along. But for the time being, Jarno Opmeer happily staying ahead of his teammate.
Yeah, well, I will say this, despite obviously the concerns as far as Mercedes are in terms of the tyre usage, Alfie Butcher has lost a little bit of time to Jarno Opmeer. Jarno is poking around that delta, but that could easily be Alfie Butcher saving as well at the same time. As now we're seeing some movement here at Mercedes. Did look like that Jake Benham was going to try and make a move on Jarno into turn 1, coming out of turn 2. As now they hurtle around this next left-hander and burst down towards the Retroposta. There's a queue now formulating in behind. Look at this as well. Freddie Rasmussen this time looking to attack. Luke Smith now around the outside, heading through towards Decidia Delago. As now they make their way through towards turn 4. Rasmussen on the attack, but Luke Smith on those hard tyres, making his life very difficult.
Yeah, critical stuff here is that Freddie Rasmussen actually doesn't have any battery left. He's not going to let him deter him, though. He'll go up the inside of Luke Smith and in towards Pinarino corner. Is on the outset of this corner, and that allows for Ismail Fassi to potentially poke his nose in here. Luke Smith doing a great job of defending the onslaught of attacks from Freddie Rasmussen, who, George, has very little ERS in the battery at the minute. That's going to leave him very vulnerable to the likes of Ben Shabakoni, Shanaka Clay, and the most important, I'd say, of the 3, Ismail Fassi on the attack here.
Yeah, and Alfie Butcher again giving a reprieve, because now he's 2.1 ahead of Jarno Opmeer in this very early stage, but Jarno's tyres can go the distance. Though great concern if you are a Jake Benham fan right now. Otis Lawrence now past Ruben Pedreño on the hard tyres, trying to find some legway here at this stage. Further down, Josh Edo as well, dispatching Brendan Lee, as now we see Ismail Fassi on the attack this time as well. Fassi also on the soft tyre strategy, which no doubt is going to prove to be very tricky to manage later on into the race. They're going to run wheel to wheel. Heading out now of Decidia Delago, but Rasmussen with enough in the locker to defend the place against Fassi.
Yeah, Fassi really going for this move, and they're losing time to the top 4 at the minute. And so this really is, what is the value that they're actually getting from all this battling? They've got to save these softs and take them as long as possible. Otherwise, they're just going to lose so much in the final part of this race to the likes of Jarno, Luke, Danny, all of those guys who are going to be on a set of the soft compound tires or the mediums if they so choose to go onto that yellow wall set. They're going to be in a very disadvantaged position. So Freddie, Ishmael, they've got to save the tyres. They've got to choose who's going to lead out of the pair of them.
Yeah, absolutely right. Fassi now back in the wheel tracks of Freddie Rasmussen, who's doing a great job in 5th place. The big question is, how long can these softs go on for? That is the ultimate question. Obviously, they'll be working together with their strategists. Mercedes on a split strat, which will no doubt work in their favour, at least in some degree. And Jake Benham does still harbour some track position, which is integral, at least for now. As now we're seeing lots of movements happening throughout this grid order. Shanaka Clay on the attack now. Also on soft tyres. Burst past Ishmael Fassi, who was attacking Freddie Rasmussen early on. But now Shanaka Clay taking a piece of the pie. The AlphaTauri now moving on up and holds on to that 6th place.
Yeah, nice stuff there from Shanaka Clay. Ishmael Fassi not really offering too much of a defence. There's Danny Bergenet looking up the inside of Alvaro Carreton and George. These are early signs that maybe the softs are beginning to die off, and Danny Bergenet looking to pick off these soft runners. He had a half look up the inside of Alvaro Carreton, not in towards Biko de Pato though, but it is good signs for the Hungarian that potentially in the next few laps he could be all over the rear of all the drivers that brutalised him in the beginning laps. Key to note as well, Alfie Butcher losing time to Jan Watmere and Luke Smith hounding the rear of Jake Benham. So I think now the tides are shifting.
Yeah, well, Nicholas Longue still doing purple sectors. He's managed to do one in the first sector, so the softs are working, at least for now. There's movements further up as well. Battle for P8 and P7. Fassi trying to defend a place against Ben Chabo-Connie. We got Freddie Rasmussen going wheel to wheel with Shanaka Clay, who managed to dispose of Ishmael Fassi earlier on. And Shanaka Clay moving the AlphaTauri ahead of the Red Bull now as they ran wheel to wheel down the Retta Aposta. Great move for Clay, who batters back against the Great Dane, and he's now in the top 5.
Can you believe that man is not a part of an F1 esports team? What a sensational season Shanaka Clay is having. I like to call it a revitalization of his career, doing a fantastic job as a reserve here this evening in that. AlphaTauri is doing a great job to get himself ahead of the very experienced Freddie Rasmussen. He's already got through on the young up-and-coming Ishmael Fassi, and now he's the leading soft runner in this train, looking to close that gap to the top 4. Shanaka Clay, George, in a great position after starting 11th.
Yeah, and someone who isn't either is, though, Jake Benham, soft tyres, and starting to fall back from Jarno, and Luke Smith has got DRS. So can he get into the wheel tracks? Can he get in the slipstream? He actually breaks out of the aero on Jake Benham's car. Obviously a great way of trying to conserve tyre life and at the same time trying to manage the pace. Further back, Alvaro Carreton not only getting past Ben Chabo-Connie, but through the center S's, displacing his teammate. A double overtake from the season 27 Brazilian Grand Prix winner. Tremendous move. Both Williams now well and truly in the top 8.
Alvaro Carreton, he's still got it. Great stuff from him there, getting himself ahead of Ben Chabo-Connie and Ishmael Fassi, but the softs are beginning to die off. Thomas Ronhaar on the back of the Haas car, and we'll see what he can do. Of course, formerly a part of that Haas esports team, now making the move over to Sauber. We'll see what he can do on his set of the Haas. The two McLarens also bring up the rear of this train. Thomas all over the back of Ben Chabo-Connie. Can't quite find the move at this point in the second sector, but heading in towards turn number 1, if he gets a good exit off of Yun Sao, he could be in a very strong position heading in towards that first corner. Yeah,
we're getting some insight as well that potentially the hard tyres are starting to twist. So I will say this, Jake Benham still harbours the fastest lap of the race so far, though in the last laps, Jarno was the quickest driver in the top 3. He was faster than Alfie Butcher by 4/10. Now that could be Alfie Butcher saving, but I would harbour a guess that now we're starting to see the soft tyres start to wear off. So these are key laps now for Jarno Watmere. Needs to try and push, needs to try and put in something in order to negate the deficit that Alfie Butcher has put in place. What I will say is this, I don't think that 1.6 seconds is going to be enough for Butcher when the pit stops roll around.
Alfie Butcher, he needs to keep his wits about him. He's got 76% in the battery at the minute in comparison to Jan Watmir's 87. So both of them very high on the ERS charge. Alfie can certainly afford to push a little bit and maybe try and stretch the advantage back around to 2 seconds. But I'd say if Alfie comes into the pit lane ahead of Jan Watmir, it's going to be a good first stint for the Butcher. He's in a great position at the minute. Jarno will be a bit preoccupied with Jake Benham and Luke Smith potentially fighting in behind. Of course, teammates with Jake, we're not really going to see a battle, but Luke Smith could cause some disruptions. But coming on towards lap number 11 of 36, we're coming up towards the 1/3 of the way through point in this Grand Prix, and Alfie Butcher, George, still controlling the pace very nicely.
Yeah, but his teammate isn't, and Thomas Ronhaar has just managed to burst past him on the hard tyres. So there we go. It's starting to work here for the white banded tyres as they head through turns 1 and 2 out of the centre S's. Thomas Ronhaar, who went close to the PSGL title in recent years, back in season 32 and 33. Of course, it would be Jarno Watmir to take his 4th PSGL PC title the season after. So 2 Dutchmen in the last 2 seasons have taken the crown, as now we'll see them make their way through the next right-hander, bursting through the Ferradura at turn 6. And up at the sharp end as well, once again, Jarno Watmir flirting with that 1.7 second gap. It hasn't really moved too much, just outward slightly. 1.6 seems to be where it's sort of centered around, with Jake Benham in 3rd place, trying to manage the pace. Seems to be doing a good job with Luke Smith nonetheless. We see the straight line speed on the Mercedes seems to carry a lot more straight line speed, because whilst obviously the corners seem to be working reasonably well for Smith here in this late stage, the getaway out of Junchao, whether that's because Jarno's giving him the DRS, really helping Jake Benham keep Luke Smith behind him here.
Yeah, Luke Smith, I don't think he's pushing all too hard to force this move on the back of Jake Benham. Maybe he's just happy to sit in for the time being, as it is a real indicator now that we see Otis Lawrence go through on bench Jabo Konyi, that those soft tyres are well and truly dying out at this point, especially in at that mid-pack where I think they've been fighting the most. So maybe in the next 1 or 2 laps, George, we could potentially start to see Alfie Butcher lose time to Jarno Watmir, and maybe Luke Smith can get through on Jake Benham eventually.
Yeah, great move there from Otis Lawrence on bench Jabo Konyi, and moves into the top 10 now, following suit from what we saw from Thomas Ronhaar only a few laps ago, or in the last 2 laps nonetheless, as now we see them make their way around on lap 12 of 36. We're a third into the race so far, as we now head through the middle sector here, with the McLaren now chasing after the Alfa Romeo of Thomas Ronhaar. Heading in towards sector 3, still Alfie Butcher out in front, the gap still staying the same as it has done now for quite some time. Jake Benham in 3rd place as well, marshalling a decent deficit again as we now ride on board here with Luke Smith. We can just see the burst of pace now that Jake Benham will get with the use of DRS, so Jarno Watmir providing a very helpful tool there for Benham to hold on to that 3rd place in the initial stint, just frustrating Luke Smith ever so slightly. But Luke Smith, I think, knows that his race will come deeper into this race.
I wonder if Luke Smith is actually going to start looking in his mirrors a little bit more often, because there's Shanaka Clay, Freddie Rasmussen right in behind him, and if he goes to a move that doesn't work out on Jake Benham, he could be at the mercy by all of those guys who've still been able to find some pace on the softs, although all of them feeling the pressure from Thomas Ronhaar at the minute. It's a great little train that we are seeing here. Alfie Butcher still miles ahead of the field in terms of the, how close we normally see the F1 Esports grid being, or the PSGL PCF1 grid. My mistake there, George. But yeah, Alfie Butcher still having a great race here. It's just in a bit of a lull phase at the minute. Once the pit stops come, George, we're going to see some great battling, especially in the upper echelons of the grid.
Yeah, we certainly will. Ronhaar now coming right into the fight as well, currently sat 8th place. And of course, closing up on, as we said, the very first winner of the PSGL PC F1 Brazilian Grand Prix. So the 2 race winners, former race winners of this track, coming together, Ronhaar and Karaton, with Freddie Rasmussen in 6th place as well. Shanaka Clay still occupying that 5th spot, as we now see them all coming together in the top 10. Alfie Butcher now with only a 1.4 second advantage, just creeping into the 1.5s, but that crucially is 0.2 better for Jarno than it was only a few laps prior, as we see Luke Smith once again breaking out of the aero. I get the feeling here, Dan, that Luke Smith is quite happy staying where he is. I think he's happy to take the toe off Benham, because I think he knows that strategy-wise, he's got the stronger hand.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to burn up these tyres. He knows that Jake Benham is going to have to come into the pits very, very soon. So why actually push and try and force these moves? Just try and extend this hard as long as you can. Have the better tyre towards the end of the race. This is where the starting on the hards really is strong, because of course you get that massive overcut. So why not, George, try and overcut as much as possible? Luke Smith knows that, and he is happy to sit in behind Jake Benham for the time being. But I know that if a mistake comes from the All-Star, then Luke will be all over the rear of him, and already I start to see Jake Benham start to lose some speed on Jarno Opmeer. He'll close up that gap as Alvaro Carreton comes into the pit lane, but Luke Smith still in a prime position, I'd say.
Yep, 3 cars now coming in for the first stops of the race. Carreton, one of them, Joni Tormala and Barry Burman. So those are the first soft tyre casualties that we have had so far, and they'll then swap onto another compound. No less. Medium tyres being occupied here for Carreton, as we're now seeing some movement further down as well. This time Danny Berejne moving past Benjabo Konyi, and the Hungarian, hungry for more points, moves into the top 10, chasing after the McLaren, fellow McLaren of Otis Lawrence as well. On the hard tyre strat, he'll go long in this race, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Berejne has had one of the biggest drops out of anyone on this grid so far this evening. 6 places lost in this Grand Prix thus far, and that's just to losing all of the positions to the soft runners very early on in this race. He's got to make up the ground that he has lost in regards to the likes of Thomas Ronhaar and Otis Lawrence, because those are the drivers that he is going to be fighting towards the end. Those are the guys that he has to focus on right this second. The others will come later on in the Grand Prix. Danny Berejne, though,
here comes Alfie. Alfie's in. Oh, wow. So that's Alfie Butcher in the pits. Jarno Opmeer takes the lead of the race. Another 4 cars coming into the pit lane, responding no less, I'm sure, to the other stops that we have seen already. There's Barry Burman. Now let's see how this affects things with the stop being made a little earlier by the likes of Alvaro Carreton. He makes his way past the pit lane now. Has Alfie Butcher lost any time whatsoever through the course of the pit stop phase? Has Carreton perhaps pulled off a little bit of an undercut here? We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be tight as they make their way across the line. Carreton now bursting down the long straight of the Retta Reposta. There goes Butcher. And look at this, just in behind Jake Benham. A lovely call from Carreton. Lovely pit stop.
Yeah, now he's found himself in a podium fight at this point. So Alvaro Carreton with the 1-lap undercut. He's really pushed himself into a good position. He's found track position at this point, George. Of course, the tyre wear is really going to come to bite him later on in this Grand Prix, but that's some great stuff. Great thinking from the Spaniard, and he's found himself now right behind the 2 leaders.
Yeah, and he's got warmer tyres as well, because he's had a lap to get them up to temperature, so he can now put the pressure on Jake Benham. This is where the race comes alive for those further down. As we see a twist at the top, Luke Smith now takes the lead of the race away from Jarno Opmeer. So the Dutchman now reduced to P2. As into the pits comes Nicolas Longue. So now we're starting to see the strategies unfurl. But technically, our net race leader, Alfie Butcher, down in 14th, being gunned down upon by Alvaro Carreton and Jake Benham, as Barry Burman sets the fastest lap of the race on those medium tyres.
Yeah, great stuff from Barry Burman there. He's not too far off the back of those who are in at that lead train. But yeah, at this point, Alfie Butcher leading the way in terms of the net position, with Jake Benham in second. Third will be Alvaro. Of course, the likes of Luke Smith, Jarno Opmeer and Thomas Ronhaar, George, they're going to lose a lot of track position, but being on that soft tyre at the end of this race, it is going to do wonders in regards in terms of just the tyre difference. They're going to be so quick in the battle with all the other drivers who pitted early onto their set of the mediums, and the final few laps of this race are going to be something that I think a lot of guys are going to be praying don't end up in tears.
Yeah, well, as they make their way down the straight now, opportunity here for Jarno Opmeer to answer back against Luke Smith, and does so brilliantly. Halfway through this race now, and it's Jarno Opmeer who takes the lead of the race back away from Luke Smith, who now drops to second place. The Flying Dutchman back on top, and he'll retain it here, heading down the Retta Reposta into Desidia de Largo. So Mercedes now back in the lead, with Alpine now down in second. Shanaka Clay now takes the fastest lap. He's currently positioned in P16 and has already made his stop. Josh Edo as well, having a bit of a fight of his own. Bursting past now Benjabo Konyi and Brendan Lee, coming together with Ruben Pedreño here, Dan.
Yeah, soft completely dead at this point. Josh Adowu sent a very late move on the back of Ruben Pedreño actually in towards that first corner, then found the move in the very next braking zone. So good stuff there from the Welshman, and Brendan Lee also picking up the pieces and getting through on Ruben Pedreño. That really does just go to show how dead these soft tyres really are. Those three, Ishmael, Bench and Ruben, they've got to think about coming to the pits very, very soon.
Yeah, Donoso and Pedreño coming together this time as well. But the Aston Martin prevailing in this fight. Also sharing the hard tyre strategy that we're seeing right at the top end. All of the top five now on that hard tyre strat, with Josh Ido further back as well. Simon Weigang looking to also make moves past Ruben Pedreño, has done so. Another three cars coming to the pits, and that's Ishmael Fassi, Ben Charbot-Connie and Ruben Pedreño, the remaining soft tyre drivers, or those that took the soft tyres on the initial stint, coming in now. So there'll now be no more soft tyres on this circuit of Interlagos. We have now got a situation where the top 9 are all on hards, with the rest all now on medium tyres.
And it's now the choice of the hard runners. Do they extend this stint as much as they can and go to the softs at the end of this race? Or do they pit in the next maybe 3-4 laps and go on to a set of the mediums? Regardless of their choice, they're going to have much quicker tyres than the likes of Alfie Butcher, Jake Benham, Alvaro Carreton come the end of this race. There's no real bad option at this point. It's just whether or not you have the confidence in your hard tyres to go maybe to around about lap 25 or something, and then go into a set of the softs. We're in a bit of a waiting game at the minute. We're still going to see some battling throughout this grid, but once those hards come into the pit stop, George, we're going to see all hell break loose.
We certainly will. That is when we'll really see the complexion of this race. Again, Jarno Opmeer and Luke Smith swapping positions up at the front end. As now, once again, Opmeer takes the lead away from Luke Smith. And now we're seeing our first hard tyre stop now this time. Danny Berejnay coming in earlier than anyone else on the hards. And he'll make a change now onto fresh medium tyres. So the change-up started to happen a little earlier than perhaps anticipated. Berejnay perhaps trying to pull off an undercut against those on the hards further up. But that's going to be very difficult if he's amongst traffic, Danfield.
Yeah, Danny Berejnay's essentially put himself into purgatory now, because he's never going to be slower than the likes of Alfie Butcher, Jake Benham, Alvaro Carreton towards the end of this race, but he'll never be quicker than Jarno, Luke, Otis once they come into the pit lane. Danny is a trailblazer when it comes to strategy here in Brazil. He's found himself a nice pocket of clear air at the minute, 1.8 to the rear of Nicholas Longay, and he's actually come out ahead of Ishmael Fassi. So good stuff from Danny Berejnay there. We'll see as this race closes in the next 16 laps, George, if that works out for him.
Certainly will. Riding on board with the Chilean Fabrizio Donoso, currently sat in P7 and chasing after Brendan Lee. These two have immense history. All the way back in 2017, they fought to the bitter end for the 2017 title, and into the pits comes Jarno Opmeer, our race leader. Luke Smith as well in the pits, as is Otis Lawrence. So a very key moment in the race now, as we anticipate those on the medium tyres to take the race lead, at least in this initial stage. Lap 21 of 36. There's Alfie Butcher. Now where is everyone else going to filter out? I can look further down. Jarno now operating around P12. He's making his way out to the pit lane. Nicholas Longay now into P11. So there you have it. Jarno Opmeer, P12 here in this stage now. And Ishmael Fassi battling back against Luke Smith. 2 laps used on his medium tyres ahead of Luke Smith, who has a fresher compound. How much of a difference are those 2 laps going to make? Can Luke Smith get past him?
Well, once Luke Smith gets those tyres up to temperature and have bags of pace on both Ishmael Fassi and Danny Berejnay, as Berejnay soars around the outside of Pinarino, and the Alpine has now lost 2 positions in just one sector there, and that puts 2 cars in between himself and Jarno Opmeer, the main man that he was facing in this race. Luke Smith could be feeling very, very hard done by as Simon Weigang entering the pit lane. This is where, George, everything is going to kick off.
Yeah, and Donoso getting past Brendan Lee as well at this stage. That's only 2 cars now remaining. I do wonder whether Lee wanted to box that lap, because Donoso was covering off the pit lane. So Lee couldn't have come in if he wanted to at that stage. He would have had to put the brakes on in order to try and swoop in behind Donoso's Aston Martin. So whether that was an issue for Lee or whether he intended to stay out, I'm not quite sure, but nevertheless not ideal. Jarno, though, on the attack and has started knifing his way through the field. He has now broken past Nicholas Longay, coming through Decidio Delago exits out of turn 5, and now looking to hunt down after title rival, historically, Barry Burmand.
This is some great stuff that we are witnessing here. Lots of history for Jarno Opmeer at this point, and he has fought with Barry Burmand on a number of occasions here in PSGL, already chopping off 3/10 of a second, the gap between them. He is closing at a rate of knots with 6-lap fresher medium tyres. He's going to have no issue getting through on these guys, but once he catches up to the likes of Freddie, Shanaka, Alvaro, that's when it's getting difficult as old dear Brendan Lee into the pit lane. His day is going from difficult to very, very difficult, unfortunately. 5-second time penalty for speeding.
Yeah, you could say it's going from bad to worse, and it has done. And it's not just for him either. It's the Chilean Fabrizio Donoso who has also suffered the same fate, and unfortunately has been given a penalty as well for his trouble. Further back, you can see there it's all starting to come undone here for Ismail Fassi. He's got Danny Berejnay hot on his heels here as they head through towards the Decidio Delago. Opening up the door here, Berejnay choosing not to make the move. Fassi doing a superb job to go defensive and covering off any attack that Berejnay was coming up with. Obviously, Fassi's concern is going to be DRS. He's going to need to retain it on Longuet in order to be in with a chance of securing points in this race. And Luke Smith very nearly barreling into the back of Berejnay.
Luke Smith really has been caught in a difficult position here because now he is a far cry from where Jarno Opmeer is at the minute. He's not been able to get through on either Ismail Fassi or Danny Berejnay, and Jarno is taking advantage. He is already all over the back of Joni Tormela and Barry Burmand, and I think the Dutchman, he could sense maybe a double move here.
Could well be. Right on the heels of the veteran Joni Tormela as well. Has been on the scene for many, many years and is making a move this time on Barry Burmand, should I say. Wheel to wheel they go. A double overtake seen already, heading through towards turn 1. Tormela jettisoning past the Ferrari. Jarno follows him through. Jarno will have his chance on Tormela, heading down the long straight at the Retta Aposta, and he will not be opposed to making a move in towards Decidio Delago, where it lights up for the Mercedes. Opmeer now on a one-way trajectory, and it's an uphill one. He's now up to P6 with Freddie Rasmussen next on his list.
Easy as you like for Jarno Opmeer there. Throw on Joni Tormela, throw on Barry Burmand. Got a nice healthy dosage of clear air now to close the rear to the top 5. Alfie Butcher, Jake Benham, all of the likes of them are going to be sensing the ever-looming presence that is Jarno Opmeer closing into the back of them already now. 2.7 seconds is the gap between Freddie Rasmussen and Jarno Opmeer. George, here comes Jarno Opmeer.
Yeah, and in the last lap he pulled off a 109.219, which I can tell you was faster than Freddie Rasmussen by, let me just say, a real margin. 1.3 seconds faster as now Shanaka Clay defends against Frederick Rasmussen. Heading down now. Didn't really need to defend so much at all, in fact. I think he was looking more at Caraton at that stage. Rasmussen has still got somewhat of a deficit to find, but look at this. Jarno has already managed to break Longuet by 1.3 seconds. Fassi now under pressure as Joni Tormela looks to unlock the door here. I mean, he's got a queue of cars in behind as well. Just look at the car park that has formulated through Decidio Delago. Luke Smith taking full advantage. Through goes Thomas Ronha as though they go wheel to wheel. Complications in the bottom 10 as Otis Lawrence also looks to try and fight his way through.
Yeah, Luke Smith had enough. He sent a very hellacious move up the inside. Danny Berejnay doing very much the same now on Joni Tormela, who's going to be picked off by the entire field. And you'd expect this to happen to the likes of Barry Burmand soon. And once the other medium runners catch up to the leaders, this could well and truly happen as well. Joni Tormela going to be suffering what Danny Berejnay had at the beginning of this race. And it's just an onslaught of cars overtaking into every single corner. And Joni is in for a very, very difficult time here.
Yeah, less than ideal if you're a McLaren driver right now. Obviously, both cars featuring outside the top 10. Here comes Freddie Rasmussen, Great Dane, having a look around the outside of Shanaka Clay, and it looks like this time he's going to have Clay's number. Remember, Clay overtook him earlier on in the AlphaTauri. Unfortunately, Rasmussen denied again, heading through the center S's, and has lost a little bit of ground as well. A little bit of momentum, heading through the center S's. You'll have to try and find it back again. Jake Benham having a fantastic race, by the way, I just want to add. Just in behind Alfie Butcher, and 2.5 tenths away. This is a strategy that's paying off here for the All-Star. Who knows? Maybe another race win on the cards.
Absolutely, he's already had one so far this season as there's some great battling heading up Ferragiro. Thomas Ronhart around the outside of Luke Smith. Thomas, of course, on very fresh medium tyres in comparison to the likes of Barry Burman, but these two level footing at the minute. Thomas Ronhart not taking no for an answer. He'll go up the outside of Luke Smith, and there it is. Luke Smith sending the move on Barry Burman, and Thomas Ronhart going to feel very hard done by.
Yeah, Luke Smith with a fantastic move down here. So managed to switch it back, found the tighter line, and also the line heading through the middle sector through towards turn 11. Fantastic display there from the Alpine. And we'll be looking for yet more points now. Frederick Rasmussen back on the attack. And look at this, complications further up as well, as we see wheel-to-wheel action between Shanaka Clay and Frederick Rasmussen, and Clay trying to mould yet another defensive effort.
And here's Jarno.
And has managed to do it as well. And look who's joined the train. The Flying Dutchman is on the tail. So with all the battling that Rasmussen has tried to put on Shanaka Clay, it's opened the door for the Mercedes. So whilst they've got a Mercedes in P2, there's now one in P6, and on the tail of this lead 5-car train.
Jarno Opmeer is about to cook. He's got 5 lap fresher than Shanaka and Freddie at this point, and he's going to have a field day very soon. Freddie Rasmussen with a very bold move on Shanaka Clay. In towards Pinarino they go. Jarno can't quite find a way through, but he'll pull the switch back into the grass around the outside for the Flying Dutchman on Shanaka Clay. In towards Bicarabato they go. What a move. Welcome to the top 5, Jarno.
Well, I told you, he's the ultimate opportunist. It's not the first time we've seen it, but he's done it again. Heading through the Pinarino at turn 9 and through turn 10 in towards turn 11 at the Marullo corner, as now once again he chases the top 3. Jarno Opmeer now at the head of the table here, looking to once again pull himself to the head of the Brazilian Grand Prix table for the first time, as now he chases down after Alvaro Carreton, winner back in season 27 and having a great race in P3 after a devastating undercut. But how worn are those tyres? Because I can tell you, the Jarnos are nearly half a lifetime fresher than Carreton's.
Ronhart's gone for a spin. Something's happened. Thomas Ronhart gone around, and he's right at the tail of the field. He's all the way down in 20th position. What has happened there? I completely missed that. I don't know about you there, George. And all of a sudden, Thomas Ronhart, what looked to be a good race to potentially secure some points, now relegated to 20th. His championship rival, George, on the precipice of fighting for the win.
Yeah, let me just say this. This does put Ronhart at a real disadvantage in terms of the World Championship. So there we go. Opportunity now for Jarno Opmeer more so. And it does enhance the value of a victory here in this race now as well. Jake Benham now on the attack of Alfie Butcher here on lap 28 of 36. This time Jarno Opmeer has already made moves for P3 and has managed to make the move happen. Here comes now Jake Benham to make it double Mercedes delight heading in towards lap 29. Benham leads at Brazil with Jarno Opmeer following suit. A devastating race for the Black Arrows as they look to chase maximum points.
Could we see a 1 and 2 finish for them? What order will it be in? We're going to find out very, very soon. 8 laps to go, this time by Jake Benham leading the way ahead of Alfie Butcher. Jarno Opmeer, though, he is in this train well and truly on the back of these two. What a race the Dutchman is having, George, and it looks like a potential 3rd race win in a row.
Well, sit tight, everybody. We're going to be in for one hellacious final. Remaining 7 laps. Lap 36 will be the final lap run. Lap 29. And Jake Benham now leading the way after a fantastic overtake on Alfie Butcher. Remember, of course, on the opening stint, it was Butcher who led the way convincingly in that early stage. And now Opmeer is going to look to try and open the door, open up Alfie Butcher like a can of beans, and bring down his very own carving knife here on Alfie Butcher this time around. The Mercedes getting closer. He might have to be a little patient, but with 6 laps to go now, every chance here for both Mercedes cars to take an impressive win here at Brazil this time.
The intentions have been made from Jarno Opmeer. He could have gone for that move, George, but he decided to stay in behind. Here comes Alfie Butcher looking up the inside of Jake Benham. Doesn't seem like he wants to go for the move. Oh, Jake Benham potentially backing him up in towards Jarno Opmeer. And now the top 3 separated by about 0.3 of a second. This is looking like some fantastic battling. Heading up the hill towards Ferragiro. Jake Benham still leading the way. Alfie Butcher doesn't want to lead at this point. I don't think Jake Benham does either. And Jarno Opmeer, George, has the best seats in the house.
Yeah, how's your nerves, Alfie Butcher? 2 Mercedes either side. It is certainly less than ideal if you're in that Haas right now, and Benham controlling the pace, almost inviting Jarno Opmeer for an impending attack as they head through Junkau and then up through towards the Archibancaris on the right-hand side. Turn 15 will soon become the long straight, and they'll begin lap 31 of 36. Benham still in control, but for how much longer as now Alfie Butcher looks to open the door in towards turn 1. He will take the race lead. Jarno Opmeer follows him through for P2. So now it's the impending third race win in a row potentially on the table for Jarno Opmeer if he can undo Alfie Butcher's lead up the front of the order as they burst out the Retro Imposter. Mercedes now 2 and 3. They're queued up in behind, and Alfie Butcher has got to try and put his best defensive helmet on to be in with a chance of winning here at Interlagos.
Mercedes playing with their food here. George Jarno Opmeer could have easily gone for that move with the DRS and 78% in the battery. Alfie Butcher, though, remaining in the lead. It's very level in terms of the battery between these two, hovering around that 80% point. But the big difference maker is that Jarno Opmeer has 5-lap fresher medium tyres. Alfie Butcher going to be in a very difficult position come the end of this Grand Prix. Jake Benham is also going to try and look to snatch P2 potentially from Alfie Butcher, and it's all to play for at this point. This is when the guys, they've got to try and recuperate until the last few laps of this race and then go on the attack.
Oh, I bet you that currently the sweat on Alfie Butcher's brow is palpitating right now. It's going to be so tough for the young man to try and keep the relentless forces that are behind him. This is a very similar complexion, a very similar picture to what we saw back at Silverstone. Alfie Butcher was on the same strat as Jake Benham, as they are today, and they were both fighting for the race win, but this time Jarno Opmeer is part of this fight. Caraton having a brilliant race as well down in fourth, and Shanaka Clay has driven impeccably too, and they've all got a reprieve. Freddie Rasmussen with a 2.4-second gap to Luke Smith in behind. The question is, can Smith find something in order to bring himself to the tail of this field, because he does have 5-lap fresher tyres than Rasmussen does in 6th place.
Yeah, Luke Smith, he's been closing, but not all that much. And with the laps ticking down, I don't know if it's going to be enough for him. And that really is a shame, because if you think about it, George, Luke Smith was right behind Jarno Opmeer, but it was that one difference maker, Ismail Fassi, helping Jarno Opmeer by actually going on the attack of Luke Smith. And that is what meant that, you know, that's what means Luke Smith can't be up here as Jarno Opmeer closes to the rear. Here he goes.
Yeah, looking down the inside now with DRS opened up. It's going to be so smooth for the Dutchman. Oh, so easy. And it's Jarno Opmeer who leads here at Brazil once again. And this time he'll be looking to close this one out. Will Alfie Butcher be able to fight back? Can he keep Jake Benham in behind as well? There is so many stories, so much narrative we can talk about. But Jarno Opmeer, one conclusive news that we can bring you. He is leading here on lap 33.
Clearly wasn't taught table manners as a child. He's played with Alfie Butcher like food on his plate for the entirety of this stint, but finally he's decided to swallow him whole. Alfie Butcher really is going to have a tough time going back on the attack of Jarno Opmeer when he's got the impending threat of Jake Benham in behind. Jake is already a lot more confident in the braking zones despite having the same lap age tyres as Alfie Butcher. These two are going to have a great scrap towards the end of this race.
Well, he's not just Opmeer, he's just merely OP. That is simply what he is. Incredibly, back out in front again, and could be yet on the precipice of maximising his points against Thomas Ronhaar in the championship, who now sees himself stone cold last in 20th place. Opmeer now looking to marshal off yet another title charge, and this could be part of the closing chapter in that fight, as this could be magic number 5 in PCF1 for Jarno Opmeer. Of course, he will not necessarily decide it here and now. It might yet come further down the line. But obviously, this could be a very, very major moment in the story of that title. Of course, has taken 5 titles already in PSGL history. Took 1 PlayStation title many years ago now. And that'll make it PSGL in totality number 6, should he win it this season. But on lap 34 of 36, it's Jarno Opmeer who leads, with Butcher now in second. Benham trying to close up there in third place to offer a Mercedes a potential 1-2. Either way you look at it, sensational racing from both Mercedes drivers here, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely, George. And with this race win, Jarno Otmir is going to have 39 points of an advantage to Thomas Ronhaar. That is over 2 race wins when you consider the PSGL point scoring position. Thomas Ronhaar will have his work cut out for him heading into the last 4 rounds of this season. It looks nigh on impossible for him to challenge Jarno Otmir for the title. But if there's a will, there's a way. Alfie Butcher still hassling the rear of Jarno. His one saving grace is that Alfie does have that DRS and potentially on the final lap still can go on the attack.
Yeah, and also not forgetting this is an opportunity for him to save the battery as well and maybe leave it for one final lap. What Jarno could do with here is Jake Benham to put a potential corkscrew in that decisive idea from Alfie Butcher, no less, but we will find out as to whether Alfie can utilise it, as now we see Benham on the attack, just right in the real tracks there of Alfie Butcher for second place. Just look at him now, within 0.2 of a second, just trying to unnerve potentially Alfie Butcher. It's so technical here at Brazil, and one mistake as I say it, Benham very nearly making one. Heading through the middle sector now, what's that going to do? That could yet invite Caraton into the fight.
And it means that Jake Benham is not really going to be able to mount a charge on Alfie Butcher, who is losing a lot of time to Jarno Otmir. Alvaro Caraton, he senses a podium potentially on the cards. Jake Benham going to be dumping the battery, trying to pull away from the rear of that the Williams car of Alvaro. And heading in towards the first corner, they stay as they are.
Yeah, no changes in the top 3. They remain the same as they were, and Jarno Otmir has put together a reasonable gap to starve off the approach from Alfie Butcher, who I think is more concerned about at least bringing home P2, but we all know a victory would mean all the much more. Nicholas Longue with a fantastic overtake into Decidia Delago on Luke Smith as they come together again. Otis Lawrence, this time looking to promote himself up to P8, grabs it away from Luke Smith. Now the Welshman moves up to P8 and chasing after Nicholas Longue.
Great stuff that we're seeing here, but at the front of the order, George, Alfie Butcher is not able to get close to Alfie Butcher, to Jarno Otmir leading the way, and here it is for the final time. He will round the last braking zone at Junsao. It's going to be win number 4 of this season, 3rd in a row for Jarno Otmir. No one can stop him now.
Yep, he's coming up to the line, and let's say it now, 5th visit here to this Brazilian circuit, but for the first time in PSGL PCF1 history, Jarno Otmir has won the Brazilian Grand Prix here at PSGL. It's 3 wins on the bounce, 4 wins in total, title up for grabs, but is it all home and host? We'll find out in the remaining races, but one thing's for sure, OP Mir succeeds here at Interlagos.
He is the championship leader for a reason. He is the 4-time PSGL PCF F1 champion for a reason. He is the greatest driver on this grid for a reason, George. And that is because he is the very best when it comes to the race. No one can beat him here today in Brazil. It is yet again another victory for Jarno Otmir here in this season, and it looks like at this point he could be coasting to one of his most dominant PCF1 seasons he's had yet.
Yeah, yet another decisive performance, yet another strategic masterclass. Absolutely illustrious there from the Flying Dutchman. He arrived to the Brazil circuit of Interlagos with 74 points to his name. He's just added yet another victory to that as well, which will no doubt grant him yet another 16 points to that, and will at least grant him 90 points so far in this championship fight. And let me just say it now, the title is definitely on the cards. Coming into this round, Thomas Ronhaar was on 49, so it has to be said that in the remaining races, I get the feeling that Jarno, if my calculations are correct, can win it in round 9 at Austria. As we now take you through the results, Jarno Otmir is your race winner. Alfie Butcher in second place. Jake Benham in third. Alvaro Caraton in fourth spot. In fifth place is Shanaka Clay. Frederick Rasmussen in sixth. Nicholas Longue in seventh spot. Otis Lawrence in eighth. Ishmael Fassi in ninth. Danny Berejne in 10th, with Ben Chabo-Konyi in 11th. Ruben Pedreño in 12th. 13th place going to Simon Weigang, with Josh Edo all the way down in 14th place. Further down then, Yoni Tormler in 15th, Fabrizio Donoso 16th, Brendan Lee 17th, Barry Burman 18th. Further down, Thomas Ronha, a disaster, led him to 19th place, 20th then to the Alpine further down as well. Not quite sure where that led, but obviously the results just getting away from us. But nevertheless, the one result that didn't get away from us downfield, Jarno Opmeer, successful once again. 3 wins on the trot, 4 in total this season, and he takes his first race win at Brazil in PSGL.
Yeah, what a season Jarno Opmeer is having around his Joker track here in PSGL. Great stuff from Jarno Opmeer. I mean, I don't know what all the kids are saying now, and I think this is me maybe getting a bit older, but it was a calmer, whatever they say, race from Jarno Opmeer. Once again, just incredible stuff from the Flying Dutchman. I don't know if anyone can beat him at this point. I think maybe, I wouldn't be surprised, George, if he romps the last 4 races this season.
Yeah, well, he's looking in stellar form right now, and it's been a stellar performance so far, all right through the season for Jarno Opmeer, and it shows no signs of stopping right now. And no less, I'm buzzing to talk to him, because I want to get some insight as to how he felt it went. Obviously, there was so much that happened. Obviously, the strategy was perfect. I think if you were on the hard tyres in the initial stint, you know, if you were in the front 3, you were always in that position, weren't you, Dan, to successfully get the race win. But I'm delighted to say that Jarno will join us here in the commentary box. Whether he's going to win definitely in time, I know that he's going to be streaming right now and very busy with his stream chat, so do sit tight, everybody. We will be hearing from Jarno Opmeer very shortly. But Dan, it was a truly astounding performance from the Flying Dutchman.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was just such a sensational drive from start to finish, and I gotta say, I don't know if there was any doubt in my mind that he was gonna come up with the victory. It looked good for the likes of Alfie Butcher and Jake Benham when they had such a strong gap to the Dutchman, but he's just undeniable as always.
Yeah, absolutely sensational, and he joins us here in the live chat as well. Jarno, congratulations, your first win in PSGL at Brazil. Not only that, 3 on the spin, and a strategy that seemed to be nigh on perfect. How important was it to be in that top 3 on the hard tyres?
Yeah, it was crucial, of course. It helped a lot that others behind were fighting like crazy. I think Danny had an incident and was fighting really hard, which put everyone a little bit back, I think so. And then, yeah, the last 6 laps, 7 laps, I kind of knew I already was going to win. I just had to keep it clean, basically. So I just took it safe, didn't play any DRS games this time. Yeah, from there on, it was just making no mistakes. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely no mistakes in that race. It seemed to go pretty much as planned by the looks of it on your part. I suppose the one bit that was out of your control, but something I'm sure you'll be delighted with in some respects, is that Thomas Ronha actually had an issue and ended up towards the back of the field. So the championship is near enough pretty much in your hands, I think. If I'm not mistaken, I think you can close it out in the next round at Austria.
Yeah, that's good news. But yeah, to be honest, you never know. I think there's still 4 rounds to go. And I've seen some crazy things happen in racing. Once I was leading an F4 championship by 78 points with, I think, like 9 races to go, and didn't win that one. So, yeah, I just need to keep it clean from here on. No need to take a huge risk like Mexico, for example. You just have to keep it clean race after race in order to win the championship from here on. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your momentum is certainly with you right now. That's 3 wins on the spin. This is the kind of form we haven't really seen from you in quite a long time. Do you take a lot of positives from that? Obviously, in the last 5 races now, that's 4 victories. I mean, that is form to be proud of, right?
Yeah, exactly. After Barcelona, I kind of had to get my head down a little bit to still win the championship. Because I got no points there, and an unfair penalty in my opinion, but we move away from that. Yeah, just knew I had to win some races from there on. which has gone quite to plan. So this one was a bit calmer than the last two. I'm glad they were a bit calmer because I'd rather win by a little bit of a margin over 5 thousandths of a second. So.
Yeah, brilliant to see. It's brilliant to see, obviously. And obviously looking ahead now, we've got 4 rounds, like you said, Austria, Spa, and then 2 American rounds. Of course, at round 11, we've got a trip to Texas, and then we're following that up with a trip to Las Vegas. What do you make of those remaining 4 rounds? Can you see it ending in a positive result for yourself?
Yeah, I think if I do round up the championship early, I might have some fun in the last 2, and maybe start last or try something else. But need to round it up first. That's the first aim. Need to stay focused for Austria. Austria, very tricky track, very easy to get in incidents with 3 DRS zones, lots of different strategies. So I'm gonna have to play it a little bit safe there, especially in the race. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I tell you what, congratulations, Jarno. 3 wins back to back. And your 4th win in 5 races. An absolutely astounding performance in your first Brazilian Grand Prix win. We wish you all the best come Austria.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jarno Opmeer, everybody, who brings us no less a truly astounding finish and yet more wins to add to the plethora that he's already obtained here in PSGL. Very much a PSGL legend, without any shadow of a doubt. We'll go down in the annals of Hall of Fame history. If we ever have a Hall of Fame, that is. I'm sure Jarno will be one of the first to be added to that Hall of Fame. But, Dan, we can look at it and extrapolate it. It certainly has been an astounding result. One chap who does want to be spoken to is Alfie Butcher. He does join us, in fact, in the commentary box. We will talk to him as well. Alfie, great to have you with us. A busy race as far as you're concerned. I think, obviously, you were in a difficult position because, obviously, starting from the softs, you ideally would have wanted to gap those on the hards as early as possible.
Yeah, I think that was the aim, definitely. We got ahead of Luke into turn 1 as soon as possible. So, we set off on our way. We gapped. And I got told to maintain the gap, and that was definitely the right call. So I was sort of managing my tyres whilst pushing at the same time. So it was a good balance. And apparently the consistency was really good. So, so when I came into the box, they only just caught up. So I think we timed it pretty well with that. And in the end, it panned out to be a pretty good strategy.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, it was a definite, from your part in that last stint, you were in a very difficult spot because obviously you had Jake Benham right on your tail. You had a feast of cars further back that were really on probably better strategies at that point in the race. Your defensive efforts were stunning. Obviously, you did your best to keep Jarno behind, but that was always going to be tricky without DRS. Obviously, you've got to be happy. P2 was probably your maximum result, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think Jarno he got through the traffic a bit too efficiently for maybe us top guys' liking. But yeah, you can't really do much about it, and I'm happy with the P2, and you got to give it to Jarno. Yeah,
and it's your best result this season as well, having prior, 2 P3s through the campaign. Your 3rd podium so far this season. That big win must only just be around the corner.
Yeah, people have been saying in my chat that it's got to be coming because of the podiums recently. But yeah, I hope so. But yeah, the consistency's probably been at an all-time high right now. So hopefully we keep that up and finish the season well.
Yeah, and the verdict on the remaining 4 races, I know I spoke to Jarno about it. We've got Austria, Spa. We're then taking Texas on, and then obviously Vegas to finish. What do you think of those last 4 races? How do you weigh up your chances?
Yeah, I feel like I have a chance at any track, to be honest, with the right amount of practice and the right calls at the right time. So we'll have to see, and hopefully more podiums and maybe the win to come.
Well, you're the F1 Esports Challenges champion for a reason, Alfie, and obviously the pride of Haas F1 Esports. We look forward to catching up with you at Austria. We wish you all the very best for the rest of the season.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Alfie joining us in the commentary box as well, guys. And a young man who is definitely on the rise, Dan. And I'm sure in seasons to come, we'll see him develop more. You get the feeling with Alfie that he's not yet the finished article. And we can see the natural talent is there. But I think there is definitely more to come.
Yeah, a couple of issues to be ironed out for Alfie Butcher, and I think he has got that championship winning caliber. Once again, one of the youngest drivers on this grid. I can see in the next 3-4 years, once the likes of Jarno, Brendan, all those old heads, they've hung up their racing boots and they've called it a day in F1 sim racing. The likes of Alfie Butcher, Ishmael Fassi, Otis Lawrence, Luke Smith, Jake Benham, all those guys, George, are going to be, and Thomas Ronhar as well, I forgot about him too. They're all going to be fighting it out for the title, and I think the future is in great hands. With the level of talent that we have, there's more and more stars rising up through the league racing scene, and you got to give credit to the leagues like PSGL, like WOR, who are nurturing these talents from their young age to really blossom into the esports stars that we know they can become.
Yeah, they certainly are, and we enjoy creating new stars for you guys to watch every season, folks, when it comes to PSGL. And it doesn't just stop with PCF1. We've got them all the way down the tiers. Obviously, massive organisation now and a massive community PSGL has become. And we couldn't do it without you guys at home that tune in week after week. The viewership that we obtain now, the realms of 30 to 50k views every single broadcast on PCF1, and we really do appreciate every single one of you that come in and tune in each week. When I look back at season 27 many years ago now, 3 years ago, I say that's many, it probably doesn't sound like many, but to me it feels like many, but nevertheless it has been such a privilege to bring this to you week in, week out. Keep on supporting. If you've been tuned in on YouTube, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and also hit the like button as well to stay up to date with PSGL. And also, if you're watching on Twitch, welcome as well. A growing platform for us here at PSGL. A like. Make sure you hit that follow button and stay up to date with when we go live on that platform as well. We truly are everywhere now. Head across to social media at PremierSimGL on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok to stay up to date with all the latest news with regards to PSGL. And you can also check out the Discord as well. Links will be provided in the live chat for you. If you want to check me out as well, you can do at George Morgan TV. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Everywhere, really, folks. The username is always the same. Be sure to say hi. I always like to meet a few of you guys, so why not come and say hello on social media? Dan, where can they find you as well, sir?
Just on Twitter, it is at DanfieldF1_. If you could be so kind as to drop me a follow, say hi as well, say that you came from PSGL, maybe I'll drop you a follow back as well. I love interacting with everyone here in the wonderful PSGL community, so yeah, just DanfieldF1_ on Twitter.
That's where you can find him, folks. And I tell you what, you can find us again very soon, next week to be exact, where we'll go racing once again, this time at Austria. But today, history was made. Jarno Opmeer taking his very first PSGL PC Brazilian Grand Prix victory. He's gone 3 back-to-back. He has gone 4 in the last 5. The question is, can he make it 5 championships? We'll find out soon enough here in PCF1. We'll see you next time when we go racing around Spielberg. Take care, folks. We'll see you then. Goodbye.
He's got the inside, Opmeer is through on the left-hand side. Pumps the apex, gets on the power nicely, and that is job done. Jarno Opmeer now to the last couple of corners now. His finest drive, his greatest drive, and he's done it at the Circuit of the Americas. He returns to the top step of the podium. Once again, the GOAT is back. Jarno Opmeer wins the US Grand Prix in a stunning Grand Prix.